Chapter 599. Countless undead creatures gathered from all directions and climbed up the 9 mountains one after another. They were so densely packed that it seemed like the ground was covered with a layer of ants. Above the 9 mountains, the sky was covered with dark clouds and surging underworld fog. Countless ghosts and malicious spirits could be vaguely seen, and the ghost chi soared into the sky. All the dead creatures that gathered had only one goal, and that was to attack the 9 mountains in front of them. Rumble, the 9 mountains were shaking, and the ground was trembling. The dark clouds and underworld fog that shrouded the sky and the earth were all dispersed by the terrifying energy fluctuations from the 9 mountains, and the soaring ghost chi outside the 9 mountains was also blocked. The starry sky that had not appeared in the dead world for countless years not only appeared in the sky, but also sprinkled endless starlight. In the sky above the 9 mountains, the 9 stars were especially bright. They flickered with resplendent starlight and cast down 9 pillars of starlight. The 9 pillars of starlight landed on the peak of each mountain. Rumble, the power of the stars was vast and mighty, and the countless dead creatures that had climbed up to the top of the 9 mountains were all crushed by the starlight and turned into dust. The killing situation of heaven and earth lived up to its name. It was a terrifying method that used the power of heaven and earth to destroy everything. The 9 mountains attracted the power of the stars in the sky, and it emitted a horrifying and desolate fluctuation. All the dead creatures that climbed up to the top of the 9 mountains were directly killed by the power of the stars. Moreover, at this time, the earth dragon chi also surged out from under the ground. The 9 mountains were 9 earth dragon veins, and in the endless starlight, 9 giant dragons rushed out from the top of the 9 mountains. Roar! The dragon's roar shook the sky, and the terrifying dragon chi took shape. Then, it swooped down from the mountains, and tore open 9 gaps in the countless dead creatures. Large numbers of dead creatures were directly killed, and their souls scattered. Heaven's killing intent, earth's killing intent, heaven's earth's power, it seemed like there was no power that could contend against it. Countless undead creatures couldn't withstand a single blow from this terrifying heaven's earth's power. They were as weak as newborn babies. 9 dragon shadows circled around the 9 mountains. Soon, countless undead creatures that had climbed up the 9 mountains were completely annihilated by the 9 dragon auras that had taken form. The dragon chi rose from the 9 mountains, and the power of the earth dragon veins was constantly guided out, resonating with the 9 stars in the sky, and forming an extremely terrifying killing situation of heaven and earth. Within a range of several thousand miles, killing intent soared to the heavens. The 9 mountains' savage grounds displayed a terrifying worldly phenomenon. Above, there was a boundless killing light formed by the power of the stars. Below, there was a boundless killing intent emitted by the dragon veins. This originally peaceful area had now become a terrifying killing field. In the sky and on the ground, it was like an impenetrable net that protected the 9 mountains. Dazzling divine light of destruction shot out from the 9 mountains, piercing through the sky and shattering the void, instantly killing some of the powerful creatures of death that wanted to get close to the 9 mountains. Jiu Fei, the old tortoise, and Hei Tian stood in the sky, watching the scene coldly. Countless dead creatures had triggered the killing situation of heaven and earth. In the sky, countless spirits were killed by the killing situation of heaven and earth. The evil spirits of the underworld race could not even get close to the 9 mountains. On the ground, countless skeletons and demonic corpses were still rushing up the mountains. However, the dragon chi rose from the ground, forming a terrifying killing situation. The skeletons and demonic corpses that rushed up the 9 mountains were all destroyed. Behind Jiu Fei, there were hundreds of God race members. All of them were nervously watching the shocking scene in front of them. Countless dead creatures were killed. They were like moths flying into a flame, digging their own graves. However, those were the low-level dead creatures. Most of the low-level dead creatures were just walking corpses. They had no intelligence, and were muddle-headed. They were summoned by their king to be cannon fodder. These unintelligent dead creatures could not resist the summons of their king. They did not know what danger was. Even if they were killed, they would not feel anything. This time, the 3 dead races had come out in full force. The Supreme King had summoned countless dead creatures and gathered them around the 9 mountains, waiting to launch the attack. The killing situation of heaven and earth had been triggered. All the dead creatures that came from all directions were still so dense that one could not see the end of them. These low-level dead creatures did not know whether they were alive or dead. They were summoned and scrambled to climb up the 9 mountains. However, they were killed by the dragon chi that rushed out from the 9 mountains. Soon, the foot of the 9 mountains was covered with a thick layer of bone powder and blood and flesh. The bone powder was left behind by the low-level undead skeletons after they were killed. The dark, blurry blood and flesh were formed by the disintegrated flesh of countless demonic corpses. As for the countless evil spirits and evil spirits of the underworld race, nothing was left behind. Their souls were scattered and completely disappeared from this world. Old ancestor, we can't go on like this. Li Jingxie, who was standing behind Ji Yufei, stepped forward and said to Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei had seized Li Xuandao's Dao fruit. In the eyes of the god race, he was Li Xuandao. No one could see through this. Wait a little longer. The power of the killing situation of heaven and earth isn't limited to this. Ji Yufei stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes shone brightly as he stared at the 9 mountains in front of him. At that moment, the 9 great stars in the sky became brighter and brighter. The endless power of the stars condensed into a pillar of light that was almost solid. The vast power of the stars filled the sky above the 9 mountains. Starlight shone brilliantly, as if a starry sky had appeared above the 9 mountains. The gentle starlight destroyed everything and sealed the sky and earth. As for the 9 mountains, each of them was emitting boundless earth dragon chi. The dragon chi took form, and above each of the mountains, there seemed to be a giant dragon dancing in the air. The killing situation of 9 mountains had the killing light of the stars above and the endless earth dragon chi below. The two complemented each other and formed a peerless killing field that was simply unbreakable. Time passed, and the endless death creatures continued to pour in from all directions. The 3 major death tribes were fighting to the death, not hesitating to send countless low-level creatures to their deaths. To the 3 major death tribes, this was a helpless move. Without the god race old ancestors' command, no one dared to stop attacking. However, if this continued, the low-level creatures would eventually be wiped out. When that time came, it would be the turn of the high-level death creatures. 9 endless starlight condensed into a towering light pillar that connected the 9 great stars in the sky. The earth dragon chi rose from the 9 great mountains. These 2 forces were extremely powerful, causing the entire heaven and earth to tremble and the earth to undulate like waves. Countless death creatures were buried at the foot of the mountains, unable to climb up. Before the killing situation of 9 mountains was triggered, many death creatures had entered the 9 mountains. However, once the killing situation started, the death creatures that entered the 9 mountains would be instantly killed. The 9 mountains ominous ground is indeed a peerless ominous ground second only to the 9 dragons competing for the pearl. Ji Yufei couldn't help but exclaim after witnessing this shocking scene. Endless heaven and earth force was gathering, turning the entire area into a land of death. Any living creature that entered this land of death would be mercilessly killed by the heaven and earth force. This was borrowing the hand of the heavens to kill all living creatures. Unless one was a supreme extreme Dao expert, it would be difficult to arrange such a killing situation. Ji Yufei already believed that the 9 mountains ominous ground was definitely the masterpiece of a supreme extreme Dao expert. Swish, swish, swish. 2 figures rushed up from the ground. From the dark clouds and mist in the distant sky, an illusory figure shrouded in black chi also rushed out. These 3 figures were all rushing towards the god race and came close in an instant. They were the Supreme Emperor of the Undying Skeleton Clan, the Supreme Emperor of the Netherworld Clan, and the Corpse Sovereign who had just become the Clan Lord of the Corpse race. It had to be said that the Corpse Sovereign was very lucky. From the outer region of the world of death, he had entered the depths of the world of death where there were many experts. In such a short period of time, he had become the Clan Lord of the Corpse race. Greetings, Master. Greetings, Master. Greetings, Master. The Supreme Emperor of the Undying Skeleton Clan, the Supreme Emperor of the Netherworld Clan, and the corpse sovereign, the clan lord of the corpse race, bowed to Jiu Fei in unison. Since they had surrendered to Jiu Fei was their master. Of course, this Jiu Fei was not the Jiu Fei they knew. His soul was Jiu Fei, but his body was Li Xuandao's. To be precise, they had surrendered to Li Xuandao, not Jiu Fei. What's the matter? Jiu Fei glanced at the three fellows bowing in front of him and said indifferently, "Master, if we don't stop attacking the 9 mountains, I'm afraid we will have to fight to the death," the Supreme Emperor of the Undying Skeleton clan said helplessly. Although low-level Undying Skeletons had not developed spiritual wisdom, they were the foundation of the Undying Skeleton clan's proud existence, just like the population of the human race. The larger the population base, the more experts would be produced. This was a very simple principle, and the Supreme Emperor of the Undying Skeleton clan naturally understood this principle. Experts and experts all grew up from ordinary people. The same was true for the Undying Skeleton clan. Even the Supreme Emperor of the Undying Skeleton clan had grown up from a low-level creature step by step. No one was born an expert, and no one was born an expert. At that moment, countless low-level creatures were still surging towards the 9 mountains. Then, they were strangled by the dragon aura rising from the ground and shattered at the foot of the mountains. It seems like it's time to use the supreme treasures. Jiu Fei also knew that these low-level creatures had completed their mission. If they continued to go up, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. "Tell them to retreat." Jiu Fei waved his hand and said calmly, "Thank you, Master." Chapter 600. The undead creatures retreated like the tide, but the 9 mountain savage lands were already wreaking havoc. Endless starlight sprinkled down from the heavens, making it seem as if a nebula was faintly discernible above the 9 mountains, as if there were thousands of stars twinkling. This was the power of the stars. A single star could shatter a part of the world. This was definitely not an exaggeration. The 9 stars in the sky shone with starlight, enveloping the 9 mountains within a radius of a few thousand miles. It was as if a starry sky had descended upon the 9 mountains. Unless the connection between the 9 stars and the 9 mountains could be severed, it would be difficult to break the destructive starlight. No matter how many undead creatures there were, they would all be destroyed by the starlight, their bodies and souls destroyed. 9 earth dragon veins were drawn from the ground, resonating with the 9 stars in the sky, forming the first layer of the worldly killing formation. "Order everyone to retreat 5,000 miles. Jiu Fei stood high up in the sky, looking at the 9 mountains that were flickering with starlight and surging earth dragon chi. This was only the first barrier of the 9 mountains killing formation, but it was already so powerful that it attracted the power of the stars and the earth dragon chi. If he didn't have 2 supreme treasures, Jiu Fei wouldn't have come to attack the 9 mountains. Without the supreme treasures, even a true expert would have a hard time breaking the first barrier of the 9 mountains. Yes. Li Jingxie and the others received the order and transmitted their voices to the undead creatures. Countless undying skeletons and demonic corpses quickly retreated, causing the ground to rumble and tremble. There were too many undead creatures gathered outside the 9 mountains. The ground was densely packed with them, with no end in sight. It was like an endless ocean of undead creatures. With so many undead creatures retreating together, the ground was instantly filled with dust. In the sky above, the dark clouds and underworld fog that densely covered the 9 mountains also quickly surged into the distance. Within the underworld fog, eerie and terrifying ghost cries rang out, as if there were countless ferocious spirits howling. The 3 great undead tribes retreated at the same time. Countless weaker tribes that had attached themselves to the 3 great undead tribes also retreated along with their subordinates. After an hour, all the undead creatures had retreated thousands of miles away. However, the undead creatures didn't stop and continued to retreat. The experts among the undead creatures knew that the god race was about to use a heaven-defying ancient treasure. Once that terrifying weapon was used, it would definitely be earth-shattering. In order to avoid being affected, he could only retreat far away. At this time, Jiu Fei didn't care too much. He directly channeled the supreme immortal physique he seized. A vast divine power immediately surged from his body. Rumble. The heavens and earth trembled. The divine energy of the immortal Tao emanated from the peerless immortal physique, directly shaking the heaven and earth. Everyone fled in panic, no one dared to stand near Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei's long hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were like cold stars. Rays of divine light surrounded his body, and he was like a god from the primordial era descending to the world. With a raise of his hand or a kick of his foot, it was as if he could shatter the heavens and shatter the earth. A terrifying pressure surged out in all directions with Ji Yufei as the center. Everyone's expression changed. The experts of the god race knew that their ancestor was about to unleash his power. The god race patriarch Li Jingxie, hierarch Li Fan, god king Li Sheng, and the others retreated far away. If Ji Yufei were to use a supreme treasure, it wouldn't be a joke if they were affected by it. An extreme Tao precious treasure was refined by an extreme Tao expert that had gathered the rarest and peerless divine materials in the world. If one was able to completely exert the might of an extreme Tao saint weapon, then it would simply be like an extreme Tao expert had personally arrived, and it would be able to exert the terrifying might of an extreme Tao expert's full force strike. Buzz! A sword chime resounded through the 9 heavens, reverberating between the heaven and earth. A purple sword shadow materialized above Ji Yufei's head. Buzz! Another sword chime resounded. The purple divine sword above Ji Yufei's head suddenly erupted with a blinding radiance. The purple sword radiance traversed hundreds of meters and shot straight at the bull. When this beam of sword light landed in the eyes of everyone, it was like a beam of light shooting out from a laser beam. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines, as though a divine weapon was pressed against their throats. Sword, come! Ji Yufei shouted. The violet gold sword radiance above his head flew into his hand. A 3-foot-long violet gold divine sword appeared in Ji Yufei's hand. Roar! Ji Yufei roared. He gathered all the immortal energy in his body and sent it to the divine sword in his hand. Swoosh! A purple divine light immediately shot out from his hand, reaching thousands of meters in length. The extremely sharp sword chi rippled out from the purplish gold sword light that was thousands of meters long like a wave. The ripples of the sword chi were too strong. It was not enough to describe it as making the world lose its color. The temperature plummeted. Although everyone had retreated hundreds of miles away, they still felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. What a powerful sword chi! Old Tortoise was shocked when he saw this scene. He was completely stunned. The void was collapsing and the heavens and earth were being torn apart. The unparalleled sword chi emanating from the violet gold divine sword was so powerful that it tore the heavens and the earth apart. The purple golden sword light, which was tens of thousands of meters long, was even more dazzling, and frightening than the 9 beams of light cast down from the 9 great stars in the sky. One man and one sword had become the only thing in the world. Ji Yufei was like an extreme expert from ancient times, displaying an extreme pressure, causing everyone to feel an urge to bow down and worship him. The vast divine power made everyone's soul tremble. Break for me. Ji Yufei's strength had reached its peak, and he had to vent it out. With a furious roar, he slashed down with his divine sword. Swoosh! The violet gold sword radiance burst with dazzling divine light. The terrifying sword chi was more than 10 times stronger in an instant. The entire world seemed to be split in half by the sword. The violet gold sword radiance destroyed everything in its path. There was no power that could stop it. A spatial fissure that spanned tens of thousands of jong appeared above the 9 mountains. The Extreme Path Saint weapon displayed the might of the Extreme Path, directly breaking through the 9 light pillars formed by the starlight. It was as if the starry sky was being destroyed, and countless stars were being destroyed. The endless power of the stars cast down by the 9 great stars in the sky was instantly dispersed. Roar! 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 The dragon roar shook the world. The dragon chi above the 9 mountains surged. 9 huge dragon shadows rose into the sky and met the violet gold sword radiance. They wanted to block the sword. The endless dragon chi of the earth formed a huge dragon shadow. It was as if a real dragon had descended. The whole world was shaking. The void was breaking. The 9 mountains were shaking violently. The dragon chi was mighty. However, it was all in vain. The endless dragon chi of the earth rose and turned into 9 huge dragons. They could not resist Ji Yufei's sword. Without any suspense, the 9 dragon shadows, which were as huge as mountains, dissipated one after another under the sword light. When the sword struck the 9 dragons, the horrifying sword light directly shattered the 9 dragon shadows. The attack of the extreme path divine weapon displayed supreme divine power. The endless power of the stars and the 9 dragon chi of the earth were all destroyed under Ji Yufei's attack. This was the most direct way to use absolute power to break the seemingly flawless death trap. It was completely using power to win. One sword to break all laws. Rumble. The 9 mountains shook at the same time. Countless sand and boulders rolled down from the mountains. Cracks appeared on the 9 mountains as if they could collapse at any time. In the distant sky, the old tortoise and the Protoss saw the power displayed by Ji Yufei's sword. They were shocked and amazed. The extreme path divine weapon was indeed extraordinary. Just this sword alone could probably split the 9 mountains impasse into 2. However, everyone rejoiced for nothing. The dazzling sword radiance broke through the sky shrouded by the power of the stars and destroyed the 9 dragons formed by the dragon chi of the earth. The moment it was about to land on the 9 mountains, a domineering and terrifying energy suddenly erupted from the 9 mountains. Boom! The 9 mountains shook at the same time. Within the 9 mountains, a dazzling divine light burst out. Within the divine light, a black divine blade stretched for thousands of miles. It broke through the void and slashed out from the 9 mountains. Oh no, it's the peerless ominous blade. As soon as Ji Yufei saw the domineering and extremely fierce blade radiance, he could not help but be shocked. His previous guess had turned out to be true. The extreme path expert in the past did not set up the 9 mountains impasse to seal the peerless ominous blade. The peerless ominous blade was also a extreme path treasure. Even though it was only half, it emitted a shocking murderous aura. Even the Protoss, the old tortoise, and the others who had retreated hundreds of miles away felt their bodies turn cold and their hearts palpitate. The peerless ominous blade was incomparably fierce and domineering. It turned into a 10,000 miles long blade radiance and directly met the purple gold sword radiance that Ji Yufei had slashed down. Boom! The purple gold sword radiance and the peerless ominous blade collided in an instant. A strong light erupted, illuminating the entire world and shaking the entire Naraka realm. The void above the 9 mountains instantly collapsed. It was as if a huge hole had been torn open in the sky. Everything was directly destroyed by the mighty and terrifying power and turned into nothingness. The remnant power that descended from the sky directly shaved off the 9 mountains by hundreds of feet. The purple gold sword radiance and the peerless ominous blade collapsed in the void at the same time. Ji Yufei only felt a strong force colliding with him, causing him to involuntarily fly backward. The purple gold divine sword in his hands was almost shaken off. How can this be? How can there be a power that can resist the extreme path sacred weapon in this world? The Protoss were all shocked. The blade radiance had actually blocked the purple gold divine sword. It was really unbelievable. The peerless ominous blade. Ji Yufei flew backward for thousands of feet before he stabilized his body. His expression was extremely ugly. His eyes emitted 2 incomparably fierce divine lights that pierced through the void. He stared at the 9 mountains, at the peerless ominous blade above the lake and said in a deep voice. Chapter 601. The lake within the 9 mountains was definitely the eye of the array. The entire 9 mountains was a grand array that spanned thousands of miles. The person who could set up this grand array indeed had the power to move the mountains and drain the seas, pluck the stars and capture the moon. Such a person could only be an extreme master. Ji Yufei had finally tested the true power of the perilous land of the 9 mountains, using half a peerless ominous saber to suppress the array eye. What exactly was this ominous land suppressing? He was secretly shocked. An extreme master of the soul could use such an astonishing method to set up a grand array to suppress something. It definitely had a great background. I hope it's not related to the true demon. Ji Yufei felt a faint sense of unease. His only goal was to pluck the half of the peerless saber trapped in the lake within the 9 mountains. Brat, can you do it? The old tortoise, who was watching from afar, transmitted his voice to Jiu Fei. I have to do it even if I can't. Jiu Fei transmitted his voice to the old tortoise. At this time, it was impossible to back down. He might have to use the mountain and river cauldron. At this time, the 9 beams of starlight that were dispersed by Jiu Fei's sword appeared again. The 9 great stars in the sky continued to pour down endless power of the stars. And the 9 beams of dragon chi that were destroyed by the sword light of the purple-gold divine sword also formed a faint dragon shadow at the summit of the 9 mountains, showing signs of reforming. The grand array was repairing itself. This grand array seemed difficult to break, and it was difficult to truly make the array lose its power. Within the 9 mountains, the great earth dragon chi continued to rise from the ground. It was hazy and gradually covered the scenery within the 9 mountains, shrouded in the grey, chaotic great earth dragon chi. Humph! Jiu Fei sneered. Then, with a swoosh, a dazzling divine light flashed between his eyebrows. Resplendent divine light flickered about. He opened his immortal Tao divine eyes, piercing through the 9 netherworlds, seeing through all obstructions in the void. Despite the obstruction of the dragon chi of the earth, everything inside the 9 mountains was still visible to Jiu Fei. He could see everything clearly with his immortal Tao God eyes. At this time, the huge lake in the 9 mountains surged with huge waves. The half of Zhu Shi's ominous saber that was bound by the chains of the 9 stone men was shaking violently. Beams of destructive blade light rushed out from the lake, cutting through the void. Wherever the blade light passed, there was chaos. In the 9 mountains, killing intent rose and fell. Fierce blades wreaked havoc. Using the peerless ominous saber to suppress, even if it was only half of the ominous saber, even if it was a powerful being, he would have a headache. After all, not everyone could resist the power of the peerless ominous saber. Hey! Jiu Fei suddenly discovered something, and his face was full of disbelief. He saw that the 9 tall stone men towering above the lake didn't seem to be inanimate objects. Jiu Fei sensed a powerful soul fluctuation from the 9 stone men. Stone men. Could it be? Jiu Fei suddenly remembered that he was plotted against by Dongfang Chen in the virtual sky world. Dongfang Chen used a magic scroll with the spatial transfer technique to move Jiu Fei and the others into the stone men array. Could it be that the 9 stone statues towering above the lake actually had souls like the stone men in the stone men array in the virtual sky world? The 9 mountains, a murderous situation second only to the 9 dragons fighting for the pearl, was really terrifying. After carefully observing the layout of the 9 mountains with his immortal divine eyes, Jiu Fei knew that without using the mountain and river cauldron, it was absolutely impossible to attack the 9 mountains and take away the half of Zhu Shi's ominous saber. He felt a little helpless. Once the divine tool of the extreme path appeared, the whole world would probably be flattened. Swish! A divine light rushed out from Jiu Fei's body. Within the divine light was a simple and unadorned large cauldron. As soon as the large cauldron appeared, an ancient aura that seemed to come from the primitive universe suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. It was time to use the mountain and river cauldron. Rumble. The divine cauldron, wrapped in the divine light, trembled slightly and quickly grew larger. In a few breaths, the large cauldron became as huge as a mountain. Under Jiu Fei's control, the mountain and river cauldron soared into the sky and flew above the 9 mountains. The 9 rays of starlight cast down from the 9 great stars in the sky were intercepted by the mountain and river cauldron. The mouth of the mountain and river cauldron seemed to have turned into a bottomless black hole, continuously swallowing the endless power of the stars cast down from the sky into the cauldron. The violently shaking 9 mountains gradually calmed down. The mountain and river cauldron could suppress the mountains and rivers of the earth and stabilize the dragon veins. It possessed unimaginable power. As soon as the mountain and river cauldron appeared, it immediately suppressed the 9 mountains. The dragon veins of the earth that were guided over were stabilized. The dragon chi from the mountain and river cauldron was completely suppressed by the great power of the mountain and river cauldron. Moreover, although the dragon chi from the 9 mountains had calmed down, it continued to rush out from the mountains and gather towards the mountain and river cauldron in the sky. Rumble, the mountain and river cauldron, which was as huge as a mountain, emitted a terrifying aura. It slowly rotated. The 9 light pillars in the sky and the 9 mountains on the ground connected the sky and the earth. 9 beams of dragon chi from the earth appeared on the peaks of the 9 mountains and were swallowed by the mountain and river cauldron. In an instant, the sky above the 9 mountains changed color and the sun and moon lost their light. The power of the stars and the dragon chi from the earth were continuously absorbed by the mountain and river cauldron. The aura emitted by the entire divine cauldron became even stronger. Rays of divine light surrounded the mountain and river cauldron. Chaotic primordial chi appeared faintly on the body of the cauldron. All the ancient beasts on the body of the cauldron seemed to have come to life and emitted strong soul power waves. Just when the mountain and river cauldron was about to completely suppress the 9 mountains, a brilliant saber light soared up and directly slashed out from the 9 mountains. The target of the saber light was the mountain and river cauldron in the sky. The sudden saber light was too fast. Boom! It slashed on the mountain and river cauldron fiercely and a terrifying power exploded instantly. The terrifying saber chi spread out and the saber light collapsed. The mountain and river cauldron, which was as big as a mountain, was shaken and almost blown away by the saber light. Jiyu Fei was shocked. This half of the peerless saber was still fierce and domineering. The saber light formed by it was extremely sharp and could tear the void apart. Under Jiyu Fei's control, the mountain and river cauldron slowly pressed downwards. In the sky, the endless power of the stars cast down from the 9 great stars and the 9 streams of dragon energy from the 9 great mountains seemed to have stimulated the mountain and river cauldron to unleash a terrifying power that suppressed the surroundings. The mountain and river cauldron was like an ancient divine mountain, pressing down on the 9 mountains. Clang, clang, clang. Chapter 602. The peerless ominous saber was a supreme treasure. Although it was only half of the saber, it was obviously imprisoned in the 9 mountains by someone and used as the eye of the formation. Using half of the peerless ominous saber as the eye of the formation was really extravagant. With this peerless ominous saber as a divine object, even a mighty figure would have a headache. The sound of iron chains colliding constantly came from the 9 mountains. The peerless ominous saber was struggling. It was a divine object with a spirit. It was not willing to be trapped in the 9 mountains and wanted to break free. However, the more the peerless murderous saber struggled, the more the terrifying power that erupted from it was guided and used by the great formation. The tyrannical saber chi continuously slashed out from the 9 mountains, going against the sky, cutting through the void, and slashing towards the mountain and river cauldron above the 9 mountains. Rumble! The mountain and river cauldron was shaking. It felt threatened. The body of the cauldron emitted a vast amount of primordial chaos chi. The sky suddenly became misty as if a chaotic void had appeared. An endless ancient and boundless aura spread out from the mountain and river cauldron. This aura made everyone's soul tremble. The dazzling saber light that slashed out from the 9 mountains tore through the void and directly slashed into the primordial chaos void. It was as if a chaotic world had been split open. A huge collision sound resounded and the whole world trembled. The peerless ominous saber was incomparably powerful. It cut through everything in its way and fiercely slashed on the mountain and river cauldron. The destructive aura was vast and mighty. Jiyu Fei's face instantly became pale. The mountain and river cauldron was blocked by the saber chi of the peerless ominous saber and could not descend. The 9 mountains, which were on the verge of collapsing, stabilized once again. Although the saber light of the unparalleled ominous saber did not strike the mountain and river cauldron, the connection between the 9 streams of earth dragon chi and the mountain and river cauldron was severed by the ominous saber. The mountain and river cauldron could not continue to swallow the 9 earth dragon chi that was guided here. The earth dragon chi once again condensed in the 9 mountains, causing the 9 mountains to stand tall. Damn it! Apart from being shocked, Jiyu Fei couldn't help but feel a little helpless. The heaven and earth death trap laid down by an extreme-grade powerhouse seemed to be basically difficult to break. If he didn't break this heaven and earth death trap, he wouldn't be able to take that half of the peerless ominous saber. In the distant sky, the celestial race was nervously watching everything that happened in front of them. The cauldron of mountain and river. To think that the cauldron of mountain and river has also fallen into the hands of ancestor. With the mountain river cauldron in hand, he still can't break through the 9 mountains? The power of the mountain and river cauldron is not limited to this. The experts of the God Clan were discussing in low voices. The God Clan was the successor of the supreme Tao ancestors' bloodline. They had inherited the Tao ancestors' legacy and knew many secrets of the Great Desolate Era. When the supreme treasures unleash their full power, it's equivalent to a full-powered attack from a supreme powerhouse. If the Patriarch is able to unleash the full power of the mountain and river cauldron and the purple gold holy sword, he might be able to break through the 9 mountains killing formation, said the God Race Patriarch, Li Jingxie. Ancestor, why did you attack this place? The only divine monarch of the God Clan, Li Xiana, suddenly asked. Her beautiful eyes flashed, but her expression was still as cold as ice. One had to admit that the divine snatch of the 9 secrets of immortal path was really heaven-defying. Ji Yufei had snatched Li Xuandao's Dao fruit, but no one could tell. Even the God Race Patriarch, Li Jingxie, and the ultimate god Li Fan did not notice anything strange about the Patriarch who controlled the supreme treasures and attacked the 9 mountains. No one could tell that their Patriarch's soul had long been replaced by Ji Yufei's martial spirit. Your Patriarch. His soul has long been destroyed. The old tortoise could not help but feel amused as he listened to the God Clan experts' conversation. Of course, the old tortoise would never dare to say these words out loud. If the God Clan knew that their Patriarch had been killed by Ji Yufei, wouldn't the God Clan experts tear them apart? He Tian did not dare to speak carelessly. He was cautious and rarely spoke. Although he used to be a member of the God Clan, he did not know why he had an inexplicable conflict with the God Clan. He did not seem to want to have anything to do with the God Clan, let alone have any contact with them. What was going on? Even He Tian was puzzled. He knew that if he wanted to know the reason, he had to fully awaken his soul's memory to know what had happened between him and the God Clan. Our clan's prophecy is coming true. The Patriarch is making the final preparations. The God Race Patriarch, Li Jingxie, said in a deep voice. This world could only be reopened in the hands of the God Clan. The God Clan had been trapped in the Naraka realm by the ancient Buddha for countless years. Even if they took this world as compensation, it was still far from enough. It could already be imagined that as long as the God Clan could leave the Naraka realm, a battle between Buddhism and Taoism would inevitably be set off in the Tenglong continent. The world is going to be reopened. Li Fan sighed. Had the God Clan finally reached their end? No one knew that Li Fan suddenly felt nervous and uneasy. The reopening of the world was definitely an earth-shattering event. No one was willing to see this world being reopened in the hands of someone else because it meant that someone else had become the master of this world. The resurrected true demon, the Buddha who had reappeared in the Naraka realm, and the God Clan. Only these 3 great forces had the strength to fight for this world. They were playing a game of chess with the world as their chessboard. Old Tortoise, who was watching coldly from the sidelines, couldn't help but feel a little disdainful. He didn't care if the world was reopened or not. What he wanted to do the most right now was to leave this damned place. At this time, the old tortoise regretted entering the Naraka realm. He felt that he had made a bad move and wasted a lot of time. Sigh. A mistake, a mistake. The old tortoise sighed. He thought that he could easily take over the Naraka realm, but he was too naive. Who was the 1,000-year-old Buddha? How could he so easily let someone take away one of the 6 paths of reincarnation that he had painstakingly refined? However, the old tortoise never thought that the Naraka realm would be so complicated. There were many people more powerful than him. He knew that he was no match for the God Clan Lord Li Jingxie and Hierarch Li Fan. Brat, it's all up to you now. Old Tortoise secretly sighed as he looked at the figure in front of him, who seemed to be an extreme-grade powerhouse. He could only pin his hopes on Ji Yufei now. At this time, Ji Yufei was in big trouble. Within the 9 mountains, peerless saber lights continued to cleave upwards, blocking the mountain-sized cauldron of mountains and rivers high up in the sky. The 2 great powers collided, cancelled each other out, and obliterated each other. The void was shattered. This was a battle between 2 supreme treasures. The terrifying pressure made even Li Xuandao's martial spirit, who was hiding in his peerless immortal body, tremble. Not only the 9 mountains, but also the depths of the world of death, and the entire realm of death were shaking. The mighty energy fluctuations from the supreme treasures affected the entire realm of death. At the boundary between the outer region of the world of death and the depths of the world of death, the underworld was roaring. The corpse-like water rushed up to the sky. Even the reincarnation bridge that connected the two sides of the underworld appeared above the underworld, unable to move anymore. Strange movements occurred everywhere in the realm of death. The entire realm of death was shaking, the earth was cracking, and the mountains were collapsing. All the creatures of the dead were terrified. In the sky thousands of miles away from the 9 mountains, a demonic figure stood on a demonic cloud, quietly watching the changing weather in front of him. It was a shocking scene. That brat wants to break the seal by himself. The demonic figure sneered. It was a cold, black-haired young man with a pair of pitch-black eyes like a bottomless devil's nest. In another direction, there were also 2 figures hidden in the ghostly fog high up in the sky, watching 9 mountains. They were a fair-skinned little monk with a purple gold alms bowl in his hand, surrounded by Buddhist light. The other one was a skinny old monk with dark skin and a layer of flesh sticking tightly to his bones. Can that person break the seal? The old monk looked at the cauldron shrouded in starlight and primordial chaos above the 9 mountains and asked indifferently. The little monk, Fan Xiu, was expressionless. He seemed to have cut off all emotions, becoming a Buddha without sorrow or joy. He looked at everything indifferently and said, if he knew what was inside the 9 mountains, perhaps he wouldn't want to break the seal. That thing. Should we stop it? Asked the nameless monk. No need. The Buddhist Lord seems to have predicted this day. The return of the demon is irreversible. We can only watch from the side, said Fan Xiu. That demon seems to be nearby. The nameless old monk's gaze swept over the place where the demon shadow was. When the nameless monk looked over, the black-haired young man standing on the demonic cloud seemed to sense it. A faint smile appeared on his cold face. The black-haired young man didn't escape. He continued to watch the 9 mountains in front of him. Fan Xiu and the nameless monk didn't seem to have any intention of making a move either. Everyone's attention was drawn to the 9 mountains. Everything else could be put aside for the time being. At this time, the battle between the mountain and river cauldron and the peerless ominous saber had reached its climax. The mountain and river cauldron continuously swallowed the endless starlight shining down from the sky, attracting spiritual chi from all directions. It was like 100,000 ancient divine mountains floating above the 9 mountains. Rumble, the mountain and river cauldron shook violently, releasing a terrifying destructive energy. The surroundings collapsed, and the peerless saber light descended from the sky again. The peerless ominous saber was only half a blade, while the mountain and river cauldron was a complete supreme path treasure. An incomplete supreme path treasure couldn't compete with a complete supreme path treasure. The peerless ominous saber was gradually suppressed by the mountain and river cauldron. Chapter 603. The mountain and river cauldron floated above the 9 mountains, exuding endless divine might that suppressed the heavens and the earth. Chaotic primordial chi surged, as if turning the void into chaos. The endless starlight that sprinkled down from the heavens was all swallowed by the mountain and river cauldron. Without Jiu Fei's command, the mountain and river cauldron automatically displayed the divine might of the extreme path. This was the power of the extreme path treasures. The extreme path treasures were supreme divine weapons that had given birth to a soul. They were more spiritual than spiritual divine weapons. Sometimes, they didn't even need the master to activate them and they could kill their enemies on their own. Of course, only in the hands of an extreme path master could the extreme path sacred weapon display its full power. It could destroy everything and was unstoppable. Rumble, the heavens shook and the earth trembled. The terrifying power that descended from the mountain and river cauldron caused the 9 mountains to shake and the ground to undulate like waves. Terrifying cracks began to appear on the 9 mountains, as if they could collapse at any time. The 9 streams of earth dragon chi that had been guided over were completely suppressed. Within the 9 mountains, in the middle of the Great Lake, huge waves reached the heavens. The waves rushed high into the sky, and the 9 chains danced in a frenzy. Clanging sounds rang out incessantly. The half of the peerless saber that was entangled by the 9 chains faintly turned into the shape of a 100-feet-long dragon. It was like a real dragon that had been restrained and was struggling fiercely. Hum, 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 hum. The peerless saber repeatedly made a sound like a dragon's roar. Within a radius of 10,000 miles, all living beings could feel the fierce and domineering saber chi. The half of the peerless saber seemed to have gone mad. It emitted a dazzling saber light that tore through the void. It went against the sky and slashed at the mountain and river cauldron. The chains in the hands of the 9 stone men that were suppressed in the Great Lake could withstand the saber chi of the peerless saber and firmly bound the half of the peerless saber. It was obvious that the 9 chains were extraordinary divine objects. Even a peerless saber would not be able to break them. It was likely that the 9 chains were also extremely precious treasures. Jiu Fei stood outside the 9 mountains, holding the purple-gold divine sword in his hand. He looked at the scene before him calmly. He was not in a hurry to act. He wanted to use the mountain river cauldron to break through the restriction around the 9 mountains first. At this time, all the undead creatures had already retreated to God knows where. Only a few powerful undead creatures were watching from the sky thousands of miles away. Hundreds of God clan members, the old turtle, Hei Tian, and the others stood in the sky hundreds of miles away. They didn't dare to get too close to avoid being affected. Rumble, the mountain and river cauldron, which was as large as a mountain, displayed its extreme divine might. It swallowed and spat out endless starlight as it slowly pressed down from the sky. It was like 100,000 ancient divine mountains were descending from the sky, and the void below shattered. The 9 mountains kept cracking, and the dragon power that was guided by the 9 mountains kept leaking out, but was forcibly sucked away by the mountain and river cauldron that was pressing down from the sky. The mountain river cauldron was the nemesis of the dragon chi of the earth. It could suppress mountains and rivers and stabilize the dragon veins. The peerless saber radiance could no longer stop the mountain and river cauldron. Under the extreme divine might of the mountain and river cauldron, even the peerless saber radiance would crumble. As the mountain and river cauldron continued to descend, the 9 mountains began to collapse. Countless rocks and dust peeled off from the mountain peaks. The dragon chi of the earth went against the sky and was sucked away by the mountain and river cauldron. The world was shaking, and the mountains were collapsing. The 9 mountains were being wiped out by the extreme divine might of the mountain and river cauldron, and the dragon chi of the earth was being sucked out of the 9 mountains. Finally, boom! In the earth-shattering noise, the 9 mountains completely collapsed. The earth shook, and dust rose high into the sky. Within a range of thousands of miles, the dust surged and covered everything. It swept out in all directions, as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. The moment the 9 mountains completely collapsed, 9 huge dragon shadows shot into the sky and charged towards the descending mountain river cauldron. They entered the mountain river cauldron. That is. Jiu Fei was very surprised. The mountain and river cauldron had forcefully sucked out the 9 dragon chi of the earth from under the 9 mountains and devoured them. However, there were not really 9 dragon veins under the 9 mountains. The dragon chi of the 9 dragon chi was actually drawn here by the extreme master who had set up this heaven and earth killing trap. However, the 9 streams of earth dragon chi that were guided here had been nourished under the 9 mountains for countless years, and they had really formed 9 small dragon veins. Even in the real macro world, there would not be a second heaven and earth killing trap formed by the ancestral vein of the earth. That was because there was only one ancestral vein of the earth, and it was the source of all the dragon veins. The shocking killing trap of the 9 dragons fighting for a pearl was actually not really formed by the heaven and earth. Someone had split the ancestral vein of the earth into 9 and formed 9 dragons. That's the chi of the 9 dragons. In the distant sky, the old tortoise couldn't help but be dumbfounded when he saw this scene. The chi of the 9 dragons seemed to be very similar to the 9 dragons in the 9 dragons fighting for a pearl. They seemed to originate from the same vein. Was this heaven and earth killing trap related to the peerless killing trap of the 9 dragons fighting for a pearl? Could it be that these 2 traps were set up by the same person? For a moment, the old tortoise thought of a lot of things. Back then, he was trapped in the virtual sky world by a ruthless person. The method of that virtual sky world seemed to be somewhat similar to this Nine Mountains killing trap. Moreover, in the virtual sky world killing trap, a peerless murderous saber was also used as the divine object to suppress the formation. The old tortoise couldn't help but think of the ruthless person who trapped him in the virtual sky world killing trap. If this was a killing trap laid by that person, it wouldn't be that easy to break. The old tortoise faintly felt that something was wrong. As if to confirm the old tortoise's uneasiness, after the 9 mountains collapsed and the 9 dragon chi of the earth were drawn by the mountain and river cauldron, the 9 mountains killing trap immediately changed. Rumble, in the east, a grey mist emerged. The earth-shattering earth chi enveloped the east of the Great Lake and blocked the mighty energy fluctuations when the 9 mountains collapsed. The land in the south suddenly sank, and monstrous fire rushed out from the earth. The whole south was immediately plunged into a sea of fire. The raging flames burned the sky and distorted the void. The fire illuminated the whole world. Jiyu Fei only felt a wave of heat sweeping over. Even though his martial soul had fused with Li Xuandao's peerless immortal body, he still felt a burst of blazing heat. Jiyu Fei was secretly shocked. This was not an ordinary fire. Even the peerless immortal body felt uncomfortable. This kind of fire might have the terrifying power to melt divine iron and refined gold. In the west, gusts of astral wind blew without warning. The void was torn by the invisible astral wind, and pitch-black spatial cracks appeared. Overflowing black water surged from the north, sweeping in all directions. Layers upon layers of great waves rushed high into the sky, shaking the entire world, able to shatter everything. Earth, water, fire, and wind. Jiyu Fei was shocked to see this scene. The dragon vein of the 9 mountains was broken, but the earth, water, fire, and wind emerged. What exactly was being sealed in this place? Earth, water, fire, wind. 4 vast and boundless powers surged around the lake. It was as if this part of the world had once again turned into chaos. The terrifying power was vast and mighty in the world. Moreover, it went against the sky and actually blocked the mountain and river cauldron that was descending from the sky. One had to admit that the person who set up this trap was indeed heaven-defying. Even the divine weapon of the extreme path could not break this trap. The peerless ominous saber, earth, water, fire, and wind, all the forces gathered together to fight against the mountain and river cauldron. Even with the mountain and river cauldron's divine power, it could not suppress these forces. Boom, 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 boom. The extremely powerful destructive forces kept colliding, cancelling out, and obliterating each other. They shattered the void of the world and caused the entire world to shake. The earth chi surged and a huge dragon shadow appeared in the thick, grey earth chi. It rushed up to the sky and fiercely pounced on the mountain and river cauldron in the sky. The earth chi condensed into the shape of the great earth dragon. It was as if a real dragon had descended into the world. The huge dragon shadow emitted a terrifying wave of energy. Boom! The great earth dragon collided with the mountain and river cauldron, causing it to shake continuously. At this time, a bird's cry resounded in the sky from the south, and a firebird rushed out of the divine flames. This is the southern Ming firebird. In the distant sky, the old tortoise's expression changed when it saw this scene. The great earth dragon and the southern Ming fire sparrow were divine beasts born from the heavens and the earth. The person who laid down this ultimate formation was truly generous. This was not a real divine beast that had descended into this world. It seemed to be only a remnant soul, but it was still a shocking move. A vermilion bird. Jiyu Fei did not recognize the southern Ming firebird, but he mistook the divine bird that was condensed from the divine flames and rushed toward the mountain and river cauldron with the vermilion bird. Roar. A terrifying roar came from the whistling gales in the west, and the image of a white tiger that was as large as a mountain appeared in the gales. Then, a strange beast rushed out of the black water in the north. It roared at the sky and set off endless black water. It went against the sky and rushed toward the mountain and river cauldron. Monstrous waves enveloped the entire world. The great earth dragon, the southern Ming firebird, the west wind white tiger, the northern dark black tortoise. This is crazy. The old tortoise muttered to himself. He was completely stunned by the scene in front of him. This was the legendary divine beast that was born from the four great powers of the world: earth, water, fire, and wind. This kind of divine beast had terrifying strength comparable to a mighty figure once it was born. Chapter 604. The 9 mountains crumbled, but the natural death trap did not collapse because of it. Instead, it unleashed the greatest power of the natural death trap. After the mountain and river cauldron shattered the 9 mountains, the 4 most primitive powers of earth, fire, wind, and water surged out from the east, south, west, and north of the lake. Earth, fire, wind, and water had always been regarded as one of the most primordial powers of the world. The collapse of the world into chaos was the result of the intertwining of these 4 powers of the world. When these 4 powers intertwined, they could turn into chaos, and they could also give rise to the power of the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. At this moment, the lake in the center of the 9 mountains was completely enveloped by earth, fire, wind, and water. The chi of the earth rose from the east and formed the body of the great earth dragon. It emitted a terrifying wave of energy as it continuously collided with the mountain and river cauldron. The dull sound of the collision shook the world. In the south, the fire burned the sky. The Nanming fire sparrow danced in the sea of fire, setting off a monstrous fire that blocked the terrifying power from the mountain and river cauldron. In the west, the west wind white tiger, which was as large as a mountain, displayed its unparalleled ferocity. It roared again, and a terrifying wind that could blow the souls of immortals away continuously blew towards the mountain and river cauldron. It wanted to blow away the chaotic primordial chi surrounding the cauldron. The northern dark black tortoise drove the monstrous black water to set off layers of huge waves that rushed towards the mountain and river cauldron. The entire world shook violently under the huge waves. The black waves that came one after another seemed to want to shatter the void. The rumbling sound was extremely shocking, as if there were tens of thousands of horses galloping. Although the 4 divine beasts were only remnants of their souls, they were still extremely ferocious. Although they did not have flesh and blood, they were still powerful enough to shake the mountain and river cauldron. Moreover, the peerless murderous saber that was trapped by the 9 stone men in the lake continued to release peerless saber radiance that tore through the void and clashed with the mountain and river cauldron. These 5 powers, which were so powerful that even the heavens and earth paled in comparison, were actually able to stop the mountain and river cauldron, which had displayed its extreme power. This surprised everyone. Why hasn't the ancestor made a move yet? Even the cauldron of mountain and river can't break through this place. An ominous ground second only to the 9 dragons competing for the pearl. This is too terrifying. No wonder this land of danger once devoured a god king of my race. I'm afraid even an ultimate god would die in there. A few hundred miles away, a group of celestial beings who were watching were discussing in low voices. The terrifying pressure from the mountain and river cauldron made these celestial beings' hearts palpitate and their souls tremble. Even Li Jingxie and Hierarch Li Fan felt immense pressure and didn't dare to step forward to help. Even an immortal god would find it difficult to resist the extreme Dao divine aura emitted by a supreme Dao treasure. Only Ji Yufei, with Li Xuandao's supreme immortal physique, dared to stand so close to it. Even so, Ji Yufei felt as if an immemorial mountain was pressing down on him. This can't go on, Ji Yufei thought to himself. Looks like I can't hold back anymore. If I don't go all out, I won't be able to break this heaven and earth death trap no matter what. Damn it, that monster and little monk Fan Xiu are watching from the shadows. Ever since Ji Yufei's immortal Dao Divine Eye appeared between his brows, it never closed. The celestial Dao Divine Eye had the power to see through all illusions and the 9 underworlds. He scanned the surroundings and discovered the black-haired young man who was hiding in the sky thousands of miles away, as well as the little monk Fan Xiu and the nameless old monk who were hiding in the dark clouds. The reason why Ji Yufei didn't dare to make a move and allowed the cauldron to unleash its power to resist the heaven and earth death trap was because there were powerful enemies watching from the sidelines. No one knew if these fellows who were eyeing him covetously would suddenly launch a sneak attack while he was trying his best to break the heaven and earth killing formation. Experts of this level would either not attack, or once they did, it would definitely be an attack that could move mountains and drain seas. Jiyu Fei had to be careful. Remember that he used one of the 9 secrets of the immortal Tao, the spirit snatch, to steal Li Xuandao's Tao fruit. His Yuan spirit entered Li Xuandao's Niwen palace and took control of Li Xuandao's immortal physique. This wasn't a soul-splitting technique, it was the complete Yuan spirit entering the immortal physique. Therefore, if he wasn't careful and was struck with a fatal blow, he would die as well. His physical body would become a soulless walking corpse. Jiyu Fei pondered for a while as his eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Then, he flew up and landed on top of the cauldron of mountain and river. An endless amount of starlight poured down from the sky. Jiyu Fei bathed in the starlight. With the violet sword in his hand, he stood on top of the cauldron of mountain and river. His long hair and robe fluttered in the wind. Just like the arrival of a heavenly being, he displayed the demeanor of a powerhouse looking down on the world. Ancient devil, Buddha, how about we work together to break this heaven and earth death trap? Jiyu Fei stood on top of the cauldron of mountain and river. His immortal Tao divine eyes scanned the sky 1,000 miles away, at the black-haired young man who was standing on top of the demonic clouds. Then, Jiyu Fei used his immortal Tao divine eyes to see through the void. Then, he looked at where Fan Xiu and the nameless old monk were hiding. Under the immortal Tao divine eyes, nothing could hide. Though Jiyu Fei's voice wasn't loud, it spread across the sky and the earth. The celestial race, the old turtle, and the Hei Tian were all shocked. If it wasn't for Jiyu Fei's words, they wouldn't have sensed that someone was spying on them. Everyone quickly used their immortal Tao divine eyes and scanned their surroundings. Ha ha! You finally agreed to work with me? The black-haired young man laughed and took a step forward. The void between heaven and earth seemed to shrink instantly under his feet. With just one step, the black-haired young man came near. A Buddhist chant resounded, and a peaceful aura suddenly emerged in the dark world. There was a golden Buddhist light flickering, and 2 figures surrounded by golden light strolled in the void, walking out from the dark clouds and the fog of the underworld. The one in front was the little monk, Fan Xiu, who was holding the purple gold arms bowl. Behind Fan Xiu was the nameless old monk, who had his palms together and was looking down. The peaceful Buddhist light lingered. Fan Xiu and the nameless old monk were shrouded in the Buddhist light. Their faces were peaceful, and there seemed to be heavenly flowers falling around them. With every step they took, golden lotuses appeared under their feet. That ruthless and black-hearted little bald donkey. When the old turtle saw Fan Xiu, he was instantly enraged. He almost couldn't help but rush over to settle the score with Fan Xiu. However, the old turtle didn't let his anger get the better of him. When he saw the light wheel behind Fan Xiu's head and the Buddha's Dharma form faintly appearing on his body, he knew that he was definitely no match for this little bald donkey. This little bald donkey's movements were like Buddha's. This guy can't be possessed by Buddha, right? The old turtle saw the various abnormalities on Fan Xiu's body and was extremely shocked. Chapter 605. The real big shots would use the world as a chessboard. Jiyu Fei, the black-haired young man, and the little monk Fan Xiu all wanted to obtain the Naraka Tao left by the Buddha. Whoever could control the origin bead of this world would be able to control this world. The little monk Fan Xiu actually agreed to cooperate with the origin bead. No one could agree to this request. Although the Naraka Tao was a world of death, it was refined by the ancient Buddha after all. It was almost a perfect world. Anyone would be envious of such a world, and even great existences would fight to the death for it. Because if one could control this world, then it would be equivalent to being in an invincible position when fighting others. Controlling a world was like carrying an inexhaustible source of power. They could guide the power of the heaven and earth in this world for their own use, so that the cultivator's power would never be exhausted. Moreover, when fighting with others, the cultivator could take the opponent into his inner world and use the power of the heaven and earth to suppress or destroy the opponent. Jiyu Fei and the black-haired young man would never agree to the little monk Fan Xiu's request. Damn you, little monk. Do you really think that you are a Buddha? The black-haired young man's body surged with demonic aura. Rays of demonic light circled around his body. A terrifying demonic nature was emitted, causing people's minds to tremble. The demonic nature of a true demon could demonize everything in the world. However, everyone present was a top expert. They were at least at the immortal realm, so they were not afraid of the demonic power of the black-haired young man. However, if time passed, even the immortals would be affected by the demonic nature of the black-haired young man. Their inner demons would be triggered and they would be demonized. The immortals of the Shun clan knew that it was dangerous and quickly retreated. Only the Divine King Realm experts were not affected by the demonic nature and did not retreat. There were hundreds of Shun clan experts, but only a dozen of them were above the Divine King Realm. If this kind of power was released from the Hell Dao, the entire Tenglong continent would change. There were no immortals in the Tenglong continent, but there were a group of immortals trapped in the Hell Dao. Demon, you are too arrogant. The nameless old monk who was standing behind little monk Fan Shou stepped forward and placed his palms together. Buddhist light shrouded his body and a faint and illusory image of Buddha could be faintly seen on his skinny body. Auspicious Buddhist power spread between heaven and earth, dispersing the terrifying demonic nature. The power of the devil and the power of the Buddha were clashing. These were two extreme powers. It could be said that the devil and the Buddha were natural enemies. Humph. I've tolerated you two bald donkeys for a long time. It must be very satisfying to hunt me down. The black-haired youth's killing intent soared into the sky, and the entire world trembled under his demonic might. The anger of a true demon was no small matter. Everyone's expression changed. If you two want to fight, get lost. Ji Yufei stood on top of the mountain river cauldron and channeled his immortal Dao divine force to push the mountain river cauldron down. Rumble, the world was shaking, and the chaotic primordial chi surged. The countless ancient beasts on the body of the mountain river cauldron seemed to be coming to life. They emitted bursts of powerful soul power, and the tragic aura was earth-shattering. The great earth dragon formed from the thick earth chi, the southern Ming fire sparrow formed from the southern Ming Li fire, the northern dark black tortoise formed from the northern dark water, and the west wind white tiger all roared and summoned endless earth, fire, water, and wind. They pounced on the mountain river cauldron, and their roars shook the sky as if real divine beasts had descended. The four extremely powerful forces gathered together and exploded with unprecedented powerful waves. They shattered the heaven and earth, forming a destructive storm that blocked the mountain river cauldron high in the sky. Buzz! The peerless ominous saber shook repeatedly and turned into the shape of a dragon. It struggled fiercely between the 9 stone statues, trying to break out of the seal. It shot out dazzling saber radiance that tore the heaven and earth apart, constantly slashing at the 9 stone statues. However, the peerless saber radiance from the broken half of the peerless ominous saber couldn't really slash at the 9 stone statues. They were all moved by the unpredictable power of the array, and finally, they went against the sky and slashed at the mountain river cauldron in the sky. The power of the peerless ominous saber was used. The peerless ominous saber was like an imprisoned slave. No matter how it struggled, it was just doing manual labor for the array. At this time, Ji Yufei was not afraid of the black-haired youth and the little monk Fan Shou at all, even though he knew that his secret had been seen through by these guys. At this time, he held the purple gold divine sword in his hand and stood on the mountain river cauldron, displaying supreme divine power. Even if it was an extremely strong cultivator in front of him, he would still dare to fight. After the black-haired youth heard Ji Yufei's words, he was not angry. Instead, he smiled and said, "Little guy, why don't you and I join forces and kill these two bald donkeys?" Ji Yufei sneered. He didn't say anything. He was very clear about this guy's intentions. He couldn't kill the little monk Fan Shou, so he wanted to drag him down with him. "I'm not going to work for you," Ji Yufei thought. Putting aside the question of whether he could kill the little monk Fan Shou and the nameless old monk, even if he could, Ji Yufei would definitely not do it. Now that the 3 parties were equal in strength, they had scruples about each other and didn't dare to act rashly. If one of them was killed, the remaining 2 would definitely start fighting immediately. "You want me to help you kill your enemy? Then help me break this array first." Ji Yufei thought for a moment and then said coldly, "What's so difficult about that?" The black-haired youth agreed readily. The black-haired young man agreed so readily, and in this way, It caused Jiu Fei to be slightly surprised. Why is this ferocious devil willing to help me? There was no reason. Could it be that there was something in this array that the demon was interested in? Jiu Fei suddenly had a flash of inspiration and felt that something was wrong. Could the person who set up this array be used to suppress those terrifying demons that were hard to destroy? Young benefactor, you will regret breaking this heaven and earth death trap. At this time, the little monk Fan Xiu spoke again. His gentle words seemed to have some kind of strange power. In Jiu Fei's ears, it was like the evening drum and morning bell. His whole body was refreshed and his heart gave birth to a feeling of calmness. Good heavens! Jiu Fei was inwardly shocked. The innate ability of the Buddhist sect was truly inconceivable. His words could actually turn his killing intent into a peaceful one, allowing others to relax. Little bald donkey, get lost. The black-haired youth said fiercely. Then, he directly rushed towards Jiu Fei and came to the sky above the array. You resist the power of earth, water, wind, and fire. I will go and destroy the 9 stone men. The black-haired youth was surrounded by black chi. As he spoke, he directly rushed down. A demonic diagram emerged from his body, and the 4 extremely powerful forces of earth, water, fire, and wind that were rising in defiance of the heavens were repelled by the vast demonic energy released by the demonic diagram, unable to get close to him. Roar! 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 The 4 great beast souls of the heaven and earth roared, and in unison, a monstrous energy fluctuation surged towards the black-haired youth. The earth chi, Nanming Li fire, northern dark blackwater, and western divine wind all surged towards the black-haired youth together. Rumble! The 4 powers surged violently, as if the void had turned into a piece of chaos. Endless power of destruction was vast and mighty. The void between heaven and earth could not withstand such a powerful force and directly collapsed. However, the demon diagram outside the figure's body had an unfathomable power. It passed through the collapsed void and directly rushed into the array below. What kind of magic treasure is that? Seeing this scene, Jiu Fei could not help but be shocked. The demon had actually rushed into the array unharmed. Hum! The killing saber light soared into the sky, slashing out from the 9 stone golems, slashing towards the figure shrouded by the demonic diagram. The saber chi shook the heavens and earth, shattering everything in its path as if it was indestructible. The demonic diagram emitted a series of mysterious demonic patterns, and all the deadly saber lights that came slashing down were all blocked by it. The peerless saber chi was actually unable to split open that demonic diagram. Boom! The sky shook violently. The mountain and river cauldron, which was as big as a mountain, descended. However, very quickly, the 4 powers of earth, water, wind, and fire, under the urging of the beast souls, rushed up from below and blocked the mountain and river cauldron in the void. The mountain and river cauldron attracted the powers of earth, water, wind, and fire. In fact, the power of the mountain and river cauldron was still not fully unleashed. Jiu Fei still had a trick up his sleeve. At this moment, the little monk Fan Xiu and the nameless old monk who were standing in the distant sky did not seem to have any intention of making a move. They watched everything quietly without any sadness or joy on their faces. It was all peaceful. The little monk Fan Xiu and the others seemed to know what the array was suppressing, but they let Jiu Fei and the demon do whatever they wanted. Who knew what they were planning? Jiu Fei was initially worried that the little monk Fan Xiu would make a move to stop them, but when he saw that the little monk showed no signs of making a move, he was much more relieved. If he joined forces with the demon and combined the power of celestial and demon, he might be able to break out of this heaven and earth death trap without using his last resort. He hurriedly used the immortal Tao God's eye and scanned the area below. His gaze pierced through the obstruction of earth, water, wind, and fire, but he found that he could only see a blurry scene. His divine eye was disrupted. Huge waves rose on the surface of the lake, and the lake water rushed up to the sky. 9 giant stone men stood in the middle of the lake like 9 divine mountains. No matter how much the lake water surged, it could not move the 9 stone men. Jiu Fei vaguely saw a demon figure standing above the lake. Then, a bloody light suddenly spread from the demon figure, and the entire world was dyed the color of blood. It was as if a sea of blood had suddenly appeared above the lake, covering the sky and everything. Chapter 606. Gu Fei's heart trembled. The sudden appearance of the bloody ocean-like evil energy above the grand formation was able to injure one's divine sense. Gu Fei's immortal divine eye was also affected, causing a stream of blood to ooze out from between his eyebrows. This made Gu Fei inexplicably shocked. The true demon soul had reached an unimaginable level. Even Li Xuandao's peerless immortal physique was injured, making it difficult for him to use the immortal divine eye for a while. That's the true demon blood. In the distant sky, the old tortoise also noticed the scene happening in the grand formation and couldn't help but exclaim. The true demon was an innate demon born from the evil energy of the heaven and earth. Its blood possessed a powerful demonic nature and power. One drop could pollute and demonize a part of the heaven and earth, turning that place into a demonic domain. It was the most vicious and terrifying thing. Rumble, it was as if a blood-colored sea was surging. Layers upon layers of blood waves swept up high into the sky. An evil demonic aura spread out from the sea of blood. The true demon blood. Gu Fei was startled. The blood of a true demon was not a trivial matter. Even a peerless immortal physique would be invaded by the demonic nature if it came into contact with one's body. A drop of the true demon blood can transform a bloody ocean and demonize all things. It's the most powerful. The old tortoise murmured to himself. He was an ancient character, so he naturally knew what kind of power the true demon blood contained. The lake and the 9 stone statues in the middle of the 9 mountains killing formation were enveloped by the eruption of blood-colored demonic energy. Even the frightening blade light unleashed by the peerless ominous saber could not break through the layers of blood waves. The black-haired young man refined the entire dark underworld blood sea and only managed to condense 13 drops of true demon blood. 1 drop of true demon blood could transform a bloody ocean. Layers upon layers of waves swept down, causing the entire earth to shake violently. Then, the earth suddenly caved in. An incomparably huge formation emerged from the ground, emitting endless divine light and dispelling the endless bloody chi that swept down from the sky. Formation? Is this heaven and earth killing formation going to be broken? What's under the formation? After the formation diagram appeared, more than a dozen god monarchs and above standing in the distant sky began to discuss in low voices. The ancient matrix was the foundation that formed this killing pattern of heaven and earth. Without this matrix to condense the power of heaven and earth and give birth to the divine power of the Great Path, this place would not have the 9 mountains killing pattern, much less the 9 mountains. This array. Gu Fei stood on top of the mountain and river cauldron as he stared in shock at the ancient array that had risen from the ground. How is that possible? Gu Fei couldn't believe it. The dozen or so god-king level and above experts of the god race were also indescribably shocked. The heavens and earth trembled as the void shattered. The diagram of this heaven and earth death formation finally appeared before everyone's eyes. Boundlessly profound and ancient divine imprints radiated a bright divine light, and every divine imprint contained a Tao charm circulating within it. That was the power of the great Tao. Ancient divine inscriptions condensed the energy of the grand Taos of the heavens and the earth, transforming into rays of divine light that shot into the sky. They actually blocked the heavy waves of blood that swept down from the sky. The 9 stone golems stood on the 9 sides of the diagram. The half of the peerless ominous saber was locked in the center of the diagram by 9 black chains. Below the diagram was a pitch-black hole. Waves of demonic aura surged out from the black hole below the diagram, as if there was a peerless ominous demon hiding in it. Just as I thought. Gu Fei sensed the frightening waves of demonic power coming from below the diagram, but he didn't change his expression. No wonder this ominous demon was willing to join forces with him. It seemed that there was something in this heaven and earth death formation that this ominous demon really wanted. Sigh. A sigh came from the distant sky. Little monk Fan Xiu let out a long sigh. At this moment, he could no longer maintain his calm. His pair of Buddha eyes flickered with rays of Buddha light, piercing through the void and looking at the ancient matrix that had risen from the ground. The ancient matrix covered an area of dozens of miles in the void. The ancient divine imprints that formed the matrix actually circulated two waves of power. It's the power of the immortal path and the Buddhist sect. The nameless old monk who stood behind little monk Fan Shio exclaimed in surprise. There were many ancient Buddha runes mixed in the intertwining divine imprints of the matrix. Legend had it that the Buddha runes were formed when the ancient Buddha Lord comprehended the Great Tao. They were the embodiment of the Buddha Tao, a kind of supreme truth between heaven and earth. It could even be said that they were the runes of heaven and earth. Different Taos could form different Tao runes. There were 3,000 great Taos, and the great Tao runes that everyone comprehended were also different. They had their own Tao power and could condense different kinds of great Tao power. The Buddha Tao was also a kind of great Tao. The supreme truth of the Buddha Tao gave rise to the Buddha runes. It was the embodiment of the mysterious supreme truth of the Buddha Tao in the world. This huge diagram that rose from the ground was actually formed by the intertwining of Buddha runes and immortal Tao runes. It contained the supreme Tao power of the Buddha Tao and immortal Tao. It was no wonder that the people of the celestial race were so shocked. Buddhism and Taoism were archenemies and had been fighting for countless years. How could there be an immortal Tao expert and a Buddhist expert working together to lay down a divine and Buddha grand formation to suppress something? The black-haired young man stood on the blood sea. The endless blood sea surged and surged towards the diagram below. Layers of blood waves smashed the void and shook the heaven and earth. The four supreme heaven and earth energy of earth, water, wind, and fire that sealed the four directions were also affected. The four energies were constantly being devoured by the blood waves. This blood sea that was formed by the demonic blood could devour all kinds of spiritual chi. It constantly devoured and corroded the energy of this heaven and earth killing formation. The entire grand formation shook violently. Roar, 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 roar. The four divine beasts roared. The mountain and river cauldron was above them, and the evil blood sea was wreaking havoc below. The energy of earth, water, wind, and fire was rapidly weakened. Jiu Fei used the immortal Tao divine art to guide the endless energy of the stars into the mountain and river cauldron. He continued to drive the mountain and river cauldron downwards. Rumble, the mountain and river cauldron displayed its extreme divine power. Chaotic primordial chi surged like 100,000 ancient divine mountains. It shattered the heaven-defying energy of earth, water, fire, and wind and began to descend from the sky. The Black Earth Dragon, Southern Ming Fire Sparrow, West Wind White Tiger, and Northern Dark Black Tortoise, these four divine beasts could no longer resist the mountain and river cauldron and fell from the sky. Although the four great divine beasts of the heavens and earth were not real divine beasts and were only left with a remnant soul, their ferocious might still shook the world. They roared repeatedly and fiercely charged towards the descending mountain and river cauldron. However, under the double attack of the mountain and river cauldron and the blood demonic sea, the four divine beasts could no longer withstand it. The demonic power of the blood demonic sea kept devouring the energy of earth, water, fire, and wind. It seemed to have the momentum of blocking the energy of earth, water, fire, and wind that was rushing up from the ground. Bang! 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 The Black Earth Dragon, Southern Ming Fire Sparrow, West Wind White Tiger, and Northern Dark Black Tortoise were shattered by the terrifying destructive power of the mountain and river cauldron. Vaguely, one could see the remnant souls being devoured by the mountain and river cauldron. The four divine beasts became one of the countless beast souls of the ancient beasts in the mountain and river cauldron. Roar! I didn't expect the Buddhist Lord to seal that thing together with that person. They really think highly of me. The black-haired young man suddenly roared angrily as his long hair fluttered wildly. Then, blood-colored lightning began to appear in the blood sea. Countless blood-colored lightning began to intertwine and form blood-colored demonic patterns. A vast and terrifying power full of demonic nature was rapidly condensing. With my blood, I will set up a demonic formation to kill immortals, gods, and Buddhas. The black-haired young man roared. His voice shook the sky and the vault of heaven. The rolling sound waves spread out from the formation, making everyone's ears ring and soul tremble. Rumble, it was as if thousands of demonic thunders were exploding in the blood-colored waves. The endless blood-colored light quickly receded, and a demonic formation formed by blood-colored lightning appeared above the 9 stone men and the sky-defying ancient formation diagram. At this time, the huge lake on the ground had already disappeared. The ground sank, and the demonic aura surged in the pitch-black hole. There was a demonic aura that shot up to the sky. This was a confrontation between the demonic formation and the ancient God and Buddha formation formed by the intertwining power of Buddhism and Taoism. At this time, the power of the entire peerless killing formation was fully displayed. The peerless ominous saber struggled violently in the God and Buddha formation, shooting out rays of destructive saber radiance. The terrifying destructive saber radiance was guided and moved by the God and Buddha formation. All of them slashed upwards, hitting the descending blood-killing demonic formation and causing the blood-colored light to flash wildly. Even the peerless ominous saber couldn't break the terrifying formation diagram that the black-haired young man had laid out using his own demonic blood. Moreover, the demonic diagram was integrated into the demonic formation, causing its power to increase greatly. The black-haired young man stood in the middle of the demonic formation formed by the crisscrossing blood-colored lightning as if he had gone mad. He roared again and again as he controlled the demonic formation to meet the incoming Buddha and Tao formation. The ancient formation formed by the intertwining power of Buddhism and immortal Tao, with the 9 stone men and the peerless ominous saber as the divine treasures, its power was not inferior to the demonic formation of the black-haired young man. Boom! It was as if 2 worlds had collided together. Amidst the earth-shattering noise, the 2 great formations collided. The power of the evil Tao, Buddhist Tao, and immortal Tao erupted like a volcano. Endless divine light illuminated the entire world. The earth was collapsing, and dust rose high into the sky. The black-haired young man fiercely rushed into the Buddha and Tao formation. At the same time, the 9 stone men in the Buddha and Tao formation moved as if they had gained life. Like 9 peerless masters, they fought against the black-haired young man. No one expected that the 9 stone men would suddenly come to life, as if they were infused with endless vitality. Chapter 607. Rumble. The 2 great formations collided with each other, producing an incomparably shocking sound like rolling thunder. It was as if thousands of lightning bolts were wreaking havoc in the clouds. The terrifying demonic energy, the peaceful Buddhist energy, and the immortal spirit energy were colliding with each other, cancelling each other out and destroying each other. Demonic marks, divine marks, and Buddha marks intertwined as 3 different powers of the great Tao surged forth. 3 different types of great Tao rhymes flowed as blood-colored demonic marks, Buddha marks, and divine marks dissipated into the air. The power of the great path was destroying each other. The 3 types of Tao patterns were all manifestations of the power of the great path. When the Tao patterns dissipated, the power of the great path condensed from the Tao patterns also dissipated into the void. Within a radius of 10 miles, countless Tao patterns were intertwined. The power of the great Tao destroyed everything. Under the collision of the 3 Tao energies, the void was like a thin piece of paper being torn to pieces. The void of the world was also extremely fragile in front of the power of the great Tao. The power of the great Tao broke the world. At this time, the 4 most primitive powers of the world, earth, water, wind, and fire, had already dispersed. The power of the demonic formation, divine formation, and Buddhist formation spread out, shaking the mountain and river cauldron in the sky. Gu Fei stood on top of the mountain and river cauldron, feeling inexplicably shocked. He felt threatened, so he directly drove the mountain and river cauldron to the sky and retreated. The blood-colored demonic patterns attracted the endless power of the demonic Tao. It was as if there was a sea of blood between the heavens and the earth, emitting a terrifying demonic aura that made all things in the world tremble. The dozen experts above the Divine King level who were watching from afar all changed their expressions. At this time, they had no choice but to retreat. This was a contest of the power of the great Tao. This was the method of the extreme Tao experts. Only the extreme Tao experts could comprehend the great Tao and attract the power of the great Tao to their body. Although the black-haired young man was only a true demon devil soul and had not truly regenerated his flesh and blood, He could only use the blood of the true demon to lay down a demonic formation to attract the power of the demonic Tao to resist the ancient divine formation. The ancient Buddha formation was definitely created by the ancient Buddhist Lord and another expert who comprehended the immortal Tao. Although this formation had been around for countless years, it still displayed the power of the extreme Tao. Ji Yufei steered the cauldron of mountain and river and retreated far away. At this time, Old Turtle and Hei Tian did not retreat with the dozen god kings. Instead, they rushed forward and reunited with Ji Yufei. "Stinking brat, aren't you afraid that the ominous demon will destroy you too?" The Old Turtle rushed to the mountain and river cauldron and transmitted his voice to Ji Yufei. At this time, Ji Yufei was still Li Xuandao. In the eyes of the Shun clan, he was the only surviving ancestor of the Shun clan. The Shun clan did not see through him. "Humph. We still don't know who will destroy who." Ji Yufei sneered and transmitted his voice to the Old Turtle. This true demon had been sealed for countless years, so no one knew how much power it had left. However, Ji Yufei was certain that this ominous demon would not be able to return to its previous peak state, at least not in a short period of time. With Li Xuandao's supreme immortal physique and 2 sacred weapons, Ji Yufei was confident that he could fight against this true demon. Working together with the ominous demon is only using each other, Ji Yufei coldly said. Ji Yufei had no choice but to work together with the ominous demon. With the power of his side, it would be very difficult to break through the 9 dragons competing for the pearl. "Hee hee. You brat, you seem to be enlightened." The Old Turtle chuckled. "Boss, you want to use underhanded methods against the ominous demon?" The ruffian skeleton, Erebus, said. He had the air of a ruffian and immediately understood Ji Yufei's intention. This is called being vigilant against others, not to mention the ominous demon. Ji Yufei expressionlessly said, It would be best if the ominous demon and little bald donkey Fan Shou both get injured, then we can take care of both of them," the Old Turtle fiercely said. His eyes couldn't help but glance at the 2 figures shrouded in auspicious Buddhist lights in the distant sky. Little monk Fan Shou and the nameless old monk had been watching from the sidelines. They didn't stop the black-haired youth from using his supreme evil aura to break the divine and Buddha ancient formation. No one knew what little monk Fan Shou and the old monk wanted to do. "Don't be too greedy," Ji Yufei glared at the Old Turtle and said in a bad mood. It was a bit unrealistic to let the ominous demon and little monk Fan Shou have a life-and-death battle. At this time, only Ji Yufei, little monk Fan Shou, and the ominous demon had the strength to spy on the realm pearl in the 9 dragons fighting for the pearl. Ji Yufei knew that little monk Fan Shou and the ominous demon had scruples. They would never fight first, even if they had an irreconcilable grudge against each other. Little monk Fan Shou and the ominous demon would never let Ji Yufei take advantage of them. Of course, if it wasn't for Ji Yufei's appearance, little monk Fan Shou and the ominous demon might have a chance to fight to the death for the realm pearl. Roar! The black-haired youth roared again and again. His body merged with the demonic formation, attracting the power of the evil path. He displayed his supreme evil aura and fought with the 9 stone men in the divine and Buddha ancient formation. The 9 stone men stood in the middle of the divine and Buddha ancient formation. Divine light shone on their bodies and Tao rhyme circulated. It was as if 9 almighty beings had been reborn. They struck out with terrifying power, shattering the void and attacking the black-haired youth. The Millennium Buddha Lord and the other extreme immortal Tao powerhouse really had heaven-defying means. The 9 stone men displayed their powerful strength. A punch and a kick shook the demonic formation, causing bloodlight to soar into the sky. If the black-haired demon hadn't borrowed the power of the demonic formation to attract the power of the evil path, his demonic soul would have long been destroyed by the 9 stone men. The 9 stone men each held a chain in their hands, firmly binding the half of the peerless ominous saber. They constantly guided the saber light of the peerless ominous saber to slash at the black-haired demon. The saber light of the peerless ominous saber was domineering and vicious to the extreme. Even the black-haired demon had to retreat. At this time, the evil path power rippled out from the invincible black hole under the divine and Buddha ancient formation, causing the earth to tremble. The divine and Buddha ancient formation unleashed an endless amount of divine force, but it seemed that the power of the ancient formation could not completely suppress the thing in the demonic cave. Rumble, monstrous evil chi gushed out from the demonic cave as if a peerless evil demon was awakening from its slumber. What the hell is suppressed down there? Ji Fei asked in shock. To be able to set up such a powerful formation to suppress it, the thing in the demonic cave was definitely not a trivial matter. Perhaps there is another true demon suppressed down there. The old tortoise's expression changed several times. If there really was another true demon suppressed here, then it would be troublesome. Could the Millennium Buddha Lord be so abnormal that he actually suppressed two true demons in the Naraka Tao? That seemed impossible. Demons born from the heavens and earth were innate true demons, the true demons of the heavens and earth. There were not many such innate true demons. If there were countless innate true demons, the Tinglong continent would have long been the world of demons. What is being suppressed? Chapter 608. This was the clash of Buddhism, Taoism, and Diabolism. There were 3,000 great Taos, and as long as one comprehended the Tao, one would be able to draw the power of the Tao into one's body and possess great magical power that could destroy the world. Endless blood-colored demonic runes interweaved into a terrifying demonic formation that continuously collided with the formation laid out by the power of Buddhism and Taoism. The area within a radius of several dozen miles turned into chaos. The void shattered, and the world collapsed. It was simply a land of destruction. The power of Buddhism, Taoism, and Diabolism became the only thing between heaven and earth. The power of the Tao was mighty, and the entire world of death was shaking violently. Countless dead creatures were wailing as if doomsday had arrived. This was not a battle of complete Taos, but merely a trace of the charm of the Tao. However, this power was enough to shock the world, and even a mighty figure would find it difficult to resist. Without achieving the Tao, it would always be empty. Even if one achieved the Tao, one might not necessarily be able to exist forever in the world, and even thousands of tribulations could not erase it. However, cultivators who had not achieved the Tao, regardless of whether they were mighty or unparalleled, were like ants before an extreme path cultivator. The difference was like the difference between clouds and mud. The aura emitted by the three Taos shook everyone's soul and made their hearts palpitate. In front of the power of the Tao, no one could remain unmoved. Even if it was an incomplete power of the Tao. This is too terrifying. In the distant sky, Ji Fei used the cauldron of mountain and river to protect the old tortoise and Hei Tian. He watched the battle from a close distance, and the scene before him shocked him inexplicably. Just how powerful were the extreme path cultivators? Just thinking about it was horrifying. If an extreme path cultivator personally came, the 9 dragons fighting for the pearl and the 9 mountains killing formation could be easily broken. It was even possible to directly destroy this part of the world. How many extreme path cultivators have truly comprehended the Tao in this world, since ancient times until now? The old tortoise said coldly. His eyes emitted a dazzling divine light as he stared at the earth-shattering battle in front of him. It was rare for 3 types of Tao charm to appear in front of him. This was definitely a kind of opportunity. With the old tortoise's knowledge, he naturally knew the preciousness of the Tao charm. One should know that even if there were extreme path cultivators in the world, it was absolutely difficult to witness a battle between extreme path cultivators. If one could comprehend the Tao charm of others, they might be able to comprehend their own Tao. Comprehending the Tao, once one had an epiphany, one would attain the great Tao. In ancient times, the old tortoise was a mighty figure of the demon clan. If he wanted to go further, there was no other way other than enlightenment. However, in Ji Fei's eyes, the Daoist rhymes from the demon formation, deity formation, and Buddha ancient formation were completely different. The aura of the great Tao was mysterious and ethereal. It was difficult to grasp and comprehend. Ji Fei had a body full of power, but he didn't have that kind of realm. Even if the great Tao's Tao runes appeared in front of him, it would be difficult for him to comprehend anything. In front of them, the demonic formation and the ancient formation of the Buddha and God kept colliding. Blood-colored light soared into the sky, the Buddhist energy was vast and mighty, and the divine light formed by the power of immortals and gods even broke through the void and pierced through the sky. It was impossible to accurately capture what was going on inside. It was a blur, and even Jiu Fei and the old tortoise could not see what was going on inside. The power of the great path distorted the void and shattered heaven and earth, blocking everyone's line of sight. Whoosh! Rays of divine light flickered from between Jiu Fei's brows. A godly eye emerged from between his brows and opened. The godly immortal eye pierced through the 9 underworlds and scanned forward. The godly immortal eye could see through all illusions and pinpoint the origin. Even the power of the great Tao could not stop it. It was simply a heaven-defying technique. Within the godly immortal eye, there were also Daoist rhymes circulating. Jiu Fei could vaguely see the black-haired demonic man and the 9 stone golems fighting endlessly. The 2 formations were shaking violently as if they could collapse at any time. The ancient formation that laid down this heaven and earth killing formation is truly terrifying. Jiu Fei mumbled to himself. He saw that the black-haired demonic man was at a disadvantage in the battle against the 9 stone golems. At this time, the old tortoise was focused on comprehending the mighty aura of the great Tao ahead, as if he did not hear Jiu Fei's words. Hei Tian, on the other hand, was stunned by the scene in front of him. Jiu Fei's godly immortal eye was previously attacked by the black-haired demonic man's divine sense, but now it had completely recovered. It must be said that Li Xuandao's peerless immortal physique was truly incomparably powerful. It was comparable to the indestructible physique cultivated by supreme warriors. Its self-healing ability was very shocking. Boom! A stone fist surrounded by divine light and faintly discernible godly immortal runes slammed into the black-haired demonic man's body, directly blasting the incomparably powerful black-haired demonic man away. A stone golem that was hundreds of meters tall, holding an iron chain in its hand, chased after the black-haired demonic man with eyes as sharp as divine weapons. Whoosh! One of the stone golems drew a supreme blade light into his hand before slashing it out at the black-haired young man who was sent flying. The blade light tore through the void, seeming as if it was going to cleave the entire world into 2. Roar! The black-haired demonic man roared again and again as if he had gone mad. In the midst of his roar, a demonic diagram appeared in front of him. A demonic mountain rushed out from the diagram, directly shattering the peerless blade light that was chasing after him. Then, the mountain pressed down on the stone golem 8 steps away. Rumble, as if the 100,000 demonic mountains were sinking, the entire world was shaking. The ancient divine and Buddhist formations below were also shaking violently as demonic chi enveloped the world. Roar! The stone golem roared and directly punched upwards. On the surface of the stone fist, a dazzling divine light burst out, with countless godly immortal runes circling around it. Boom! The stone golem's fist directly smashed into the demonic mountains, shattering the endless mountain range. It directly rushed over like a supreme being towards the black-haired demonic man. It was too powerful, directly shattering the demonic mountains with its strength and attacking the black-haired demonic man. It reached out with its huge hand and directly grabbed at the black-haired demonic man. Preposterous! The black-haired demonic man roared at the sky, his black hair fluttering wildly. A terrifying demonic power surged out from his body like a mountain torrent. A ball of blood-colored demonic light appeared between his eyebrows. Within the demonic light, there were 9 droplets of demonic blood floating. Each droplet of blood contained boundless power. They were like 9 blood-colored worlds that were fixed between the black-haired demon's eyebrows. Swish! A drop of blood rushed out from the blood-colored demonic light, directly piercing through the giant hand of the stone golem. Then, without losing momentum, it pierced through the body of the stone golem. Jiu Fei couldn't help but be shocked when he saw this scene with his immortal Tao divine eye. That drop of blood actually had such power. Could it be the true demon's blood? The true demon's blood contained a vast amount of demonic energy. 1 drop was enough to turn a piece of land into a sea of blood. The demonic nature was so strong that it could simply demonize everything that came into contact with the demonic blood. Jiu Fei discovered that the stone golem that was pierced by the demonic blood began to crumble. The stone body was rapidly corroded by the demonic blood and disappeared in the void. The stone golem was roaring and roaring as if it really had a life of its own. Rays of immortal Tao divine light condensed from the stone body and countless immortal Tao divine runes appeared on the stone body. The immortal Tao divine charm circulated. The stone golem that was pierced by the demonic blood wanted to draw the immortal Tao force to resist the corrosion of the true demon's blood. However, even the immortal Tao force could not stop the corrosion of the true demon's blood. The true demon's blood could demonize everything. It contained the purest demonic power between heaven and earth and was difficult to expel. However, although the immortal Tao force could not stop the corrosion of the true demon's blood, the speed of the corrosion was obviously reduced. In just an instant, the palm of the stone golem was almost completely corroded. On the chest of the stone golem, there was a large hole with a diameter of several feet. Moreover, the large hole was gradually expanding and the stone body at the edge of the large hole was constantly dissipating. Roar! The stone golem rushed forward crazily and a monstrous energy fluctuation was emitted from the stone body. There was endless divine light blooming. He wanted to give the black-haired demon a fatal blow before he was completely corroded by the true demon's blood. At this time, the other 8 stone golems also rushed towards the black-haired demon from all directions. Apart from holding an iron chain in each of the stone golem's hands, there was also a dazzling saber light flickering. The monstrous murderous aura was surging and the domineering aura was vast and mighty. The stone golems that rushed towards the black-haired demon were like 8 supreme experts holding supreme divine weapons. The powerful power that they emitted caused the void to collapse. The 8 stone golems were walking in the collapsed void. Humph! The black-haired demon was besieged by the 8 stone golems, but he did not seem to be nervous at all. Instead, he let out a sneer. Then, like a blood-colored sun, the blood-colored light fixed on the black-haired demon's glabella and 8 blood pearls that emitted endless blood-colored light rushed out. Each drop of blood blossomed with endless blood-colored light, illuminating the entire heaven and earth in a blood-red color. It was as if 8 blood-colored worlds had appeared between the heaven and earth. A terrifying demonic force spread out, causing the hearts of those who sensed it to tremble violently, their faces contorted in agony. The endless blood-colored light emitted a demonic power that was unprecedentedly powerful. Even Jiyu Fei and the old turtle felt their hearts palpitating. They felt a burst of annoyance as if they wanted to go on a killing spree. The true demon's blood can demonize all things, yet it can even make my mind waver. This is truly terrifying. The old turtle has been awakened by this demonic power. I don't dare to comprehend the grand Tao's Tao and have no choice but to restrain my mind. Jiyu Fei was fine. His martial spirit and supreme immortal physique had fused together. When his martial spirit was attacked by the demonic power, his supreme immortal physique automatically reacted and instinctively resisted the invasion of the demonic power. He Tian, on the other hand, was in a much more difficult situation. He directly sat cross-legged on top of the mountain and river cauldron and channeled the supreme mysterious technique of the Undying Skeleton Clan to resist the demonic power with all his might. The soul flame in his skull was fiercely beating. Chapter 609. The 8 drops of demonic blood pierced through the void and shattered heaven and earth. In an instant, they shot at the other 8 terrifying stone men that were approaching from all directions. Without any suspense, even if the 9 stone men had a trace of the power of the great path left by an extreme powerhouse, they could not resist the blood of the true demon. The other 8 stone men were pierced. Wherever the blood of the true demon passed, everything was destroyed. Some stone men had their heads blown up, some had half of their bodies obliterated, and some had their chests pierced, almost broken in half. All the stone golems were severely injured in an instant. The entire ancient God and Buddha formation shook as if it could collapse at any time. However, the 9 stone men did not retreat because of this. Instead, they completely stimulated the power of the great path contained in their stone bodies and rushed towards the black-haired demon. The 9 broken stone men emitted endless divine light, and the Tao patterns of the immortal path and Buddha Tao were faintly discernible on their stone bodies. The 9 stone men completely stimulated the power of the great path in their bodies. These 9 stone men drew all the power of the divine Buddha ancient formation. The stone men emitted an unprecedentedly powerful energy wave. The Great Formation was collapsing. When the power of the Great Formation was completely absorbed into the 9 stone men, the entire Great Formation dissipated, and countless Tao patterns of the Immortal Path and Buddha disappeared in the void. It was as if there were 9 supreme gods whose bodies were burning with divine flames. They shattered the void and wanted to give the black-haired devil a final, fatal blow. Rumble, the 9 stone men did not hesitate to destroy themselves to destroy the black-haired demon and the thing that was trapped in the ancient formation. The earth was collapsing, and the entire world of death was shaking violently. The whole world seemed to be collapsing at any time. The 9 stone men attacked with all their strength and actually shook the entire hell path. The terrifying pressure was like the arrival of an extreme powerhouse. The 9 stone men actually displayed the extreme divine power that could collapse heaven and earth. Oh no! Seeing this, Gu Fei hurriedly retracted his immortal path divine eyes, then he stepped on the mountain and river cauldron and quickly flew into the distance. The mighty energy wave in front of him was too powerful. Even from 100 miles away, with the protection of the mountain river cauldron's primordial chaos energy, Gu Fei had no choice but to retreat. The power that erupted from the 9 stone golems was enough to destroy everything. Even an extreme path sacred weapon would not be able to withstand such power. Roar. A muffled roar came from beneath the ground. The entire earth trembled and the ground undulated violently like water. A vast demonic energy came from beneath the earth. It was as if there really was a peerless demon sealed under the ground. Let's fight. The black-haired devil cultivator roared crazily, and 2 sharp demonic lights shot out from his eyes like peerless demonic weapons. Half of the demonic diagram rushed out from his body, blocking outside his body. Endless blood-colored demonic patterns lingered around his body. Among the demonic patterns, there were 3 drops of blood that emitted endless blood-colored light. Those were the other 4 drops of true demon blood that were condensed after the blood-colored demonic array collapsed. This peerless demon used his own 4 drops of true demon blood to set up a demonic array, attracting the power of demonic path to resist the divine and Buddha ancient arrays. When the divine and Buddha ancient arrays collapsed, the demonic array also collapsed. Endless power of demonic path was also gathered by the black-haired devil cultivator. The power of true demon blood was hard to erase. Even if the demonic array collapsed, it would not disappear. The 4 drops of true demon blood once again gathered around the black-haired devil cultivator. That day, when the black-haired devil cultivator refined the entire netherworld blood sea, he only condensed 13 drops of true demon blood. At this time, the power of the 13 drops of true demon blood had been completely guided out. The 9 drops of true demon blood that hit the 9 stone men were like maggots in tarsal bones. At the same time, the 9 drops of true demon blood were attached to the 9 stone men, constantly corroding the stone men. The 9 stone men were emitting divine light. The great power of the burning stone men sealed the entire heaven and earth. The black-haired devil cultivator could not escape at all. The 9 stone men were like 9 almighty experts. In an instant, they collided with the black-haired devil cultivator. Boom! It was as if the sky had collapsed and the earth had cracked. Dazzling light shone on the heaven and earth. Rays of divine rainbows pierced through the void and shot out. The terrifying power shattered and destroyed everything. The whole heaven and earth collapsed. The void was like ice under the scorching sun. It collapsed silently. Everything, whether tangible or intangible, turned into nothingness. From the heavens to the earth, a huge hole had been punched through it. This earth-shattering noise spread throughout the Naraka realm. The area within a radius of thousands of miles seemed to have turned into chaos. The mighty power of destruction could destroy everything. Even the little monk Fan Xiu and the nameless old monk, who were watching quietly from afar, could not maintain their composure. They set up the Buddha's light and dodged into the distance. The power of destruction raged between heaven and earth, ignoring everything. Like a destructive storm, it swept out in all directions. Wherever it passed, whether it was a mountain or a valley, everything was directly wiped out and turned into dust. In the dust that covered the sky and earth, a bright saber light flew out. Like a fierce dragon, it flashed in the sky and emitted a domineering and unparalleled saber chi. It's the peerless murderous saber, Jiu Fei had already retreated far away with the mountain and river cauldron. However, when he saw the saber light, he immediately stopped. "We can't let others take it," the old tortoise said loudly. The reason why they attacked the 9 mountains was for this half of the peerless murderous saber. Swoosh! Jiu Fei directly flew into the sky. The old tortoise and Hei Tian also jumped down from the mountain and river cauldron. Then, the mountain and river cauldron rapidly shrank and was grabbed by Jiu Fei. The supreme treasures could change their size. When they were big, they could be as big as a mountain. When they were small, they could be so small that it was hard to see with the naked eye. The mountain and river cauldron turned into the size of a fist and was held by Jiu Fei. In Jiu Fei's hand, there was primordial chaos chi flowing, as if he was holding a chaotic world. At this time, Jiu Fei could not care so much. He directly used the 8 desolation steps and rushed toward the saber light formed by the peerless murderous saber. This kind of supreme treasures that had been sealed for countless years and still possessed a weapon soul would definitely fly away once it was free. If no one stopped it, no one knew where it would fly to. Sure enough, the saber light that rushed out from the rolling dust made a turn in the void and directly turned into a ray of light that flew toward the east. A fierce murderous energy filled the world. The half of the peerless murderous saber was like the birth of a god of death. The extremely sharp saber light directly cut through the void and tore apart the heaven and earth. Everywhere it passed, the void turned into nothingness. Trying to escape. Jiu Fei sneered. His soul fused with Li Xuandao's supreme immortal physique and seized Li Xuandao's Dao fruit. Using the supreme immortal physique to use the 8 desolation steps, the speed was even faster than teleportation. Swoosh! Swoosh! With a few steps, Jiu Fei had crossed 200 to 300 miles and was about to catch up to the peerless saber light that was flying toward the east. However, it seemed that someone was also eyeing the half of the peerless murderous saber. Boom! The void in front of the peerless murderous saber suddenly collapsed. A giant golden hand reached out from the collapsed space, wanting to grab the half of the murderous saber. "Little monk Fan Xiu!" Jiu Fei angrily roared as his eyes emitted 2 extremely sharp rays of light. He took another step forward and directly appeared in the sky above the half of the murderous saber. Auspicious Buddhist energy surged. In the middle of the giant golden hand, a swastika emerged and created a suction force that could devour the heaven and earth. It sucked in the peerless murderous saber. Buzz! The murderous saber violently vibrated. Countless saber lights bloomed and pierced through the void. It directly broke free from the suction force and rushed out. 8 steps 8 kills. Jiu Fei shouted and directly stomped down on the giant golden hand below. Terrifying immortal path divine power surged under his feet. Rays of purple divine lightning interweaved and endless thunder and lightning emerged, tearing the void and rushing downwards. The giant golden hand could not catch the murderous saber. It turned over and directly met Jiu Fei's foot. Boom! The golden and purple brilliance illuminated the entire heaven and earth. 2 terrifying forces collided. The giant golden hand collapsed and the first strike of Jiu Fei's 8 steps 8 kills was also blocked by the giant golden hand. After a head-on collision, Jiu Fei and the little monk Fan Xiu seemed to be equally matched. Neither gained any advantage. "Little baldass, you want to take advantage of me? Have you asked for my permission?" At this time, the old tortoise also rushed up and directly attacked the little monk Fan Xiu. The soaring demonic aura stirred up the heaven and earth. The old tortoise was like a peerless demon. He held the stone tortoise shell and directly smashed it at the little monk Fan Xiu's shiny bald head. The little monk Fan Xiu and the nameless old monk had been watching from the sidelines. However, when the great formation was broken and the murderous saber was freed, they only jumped out. They wanted to take away half of the murderous saber without exerting any strength. The wishful thinking of these 2 Buddhist almighties was really great. Get lost. The little monk Fan Xiu was expressionless. He directly waved his sleeve and directly sent the old tortoise flying. Too strong. The old tortoise turned pale with fright. He felt as if he had been hit by an ancient divine mountain. The impact almost shattered all the bones in his body. The old tortoise barely stabilized himself after flying for thousands of feet. A trace of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. He looked in disbelief at the little monk in front of him who was holding the purple gold arms bowl. How could his cultivation have improved to this level? The old tortoise was shocked. The other party only waved his sleeve and sent him, who had the strength of a quasi-almighty, flying. What did this mean? Chapter 610. Little monk Fan Xiu easily brushed away the old turtle, almost scaring the old turtle to death. Little monk Fan Xiu's strength had reached a level where he could easily kill the old turtle. Buddha, he is definitely a Buddha. Otherwise, how could he have such power? The old tortoise wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and muttered to himself. His expression was a little lonely. Not so long ago, the other party was only at the same level as him, but now, the other party was at least a level higher than him. The old turtle didn't dare to move forward anymore because he really didn't want to die. This little bald donkey was ruthless. If he were to be provoked, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this time, Jiu Fei stepped into the void and took a second step towards little monk Fan Xiu. The 8 desolation step was not an immortal divine technique, nor was it a supreme technique. It was a martial technique, the 8 steps 8 murders. With each step, its power would instantly increase by several times. Boom! The entire heaven and earth violently trembled along with Jiu Fei's stomp. The void couldn't withstand this power and directly collapsed. The collapse of the void turned into a terrifying destructive force that enveloped little monk Fan Xiu below. Everything under Jiu Fei's feet turned into nothingness in the blink of an eye. The power of the 8 steps 8 murders with a supreme immortal physique had reached an unimaginable level. Even Jiu Fei himself was surprised by such a powerful force. An ancient battle technique was enough to shatter the void and was unstoppable. Its power was definitely not inferior to any immortal divine technique or supreme technique. In fact, it might even surpass them. It was no wonder that in the ancient times, Grand Completion Supreme cultivators were able to compete against the Immortal Path's Supreme Existences and the Buddhist Path's Buddhas. They were known to be invincible within the same level. Supreme cultivators, in the ancient times, were the most powerful and the most difficult to deal with existences in this world. The indestructible martial physique was unparalleled. Their physical strength alone was enough to cause headaches for all opponents. Facing this terrifying attack, little monk Fan Xiu still had a peaceful expression. Waves of Buddhist light flowed around his body and a golden halo appeared behind his head. This was definitely a phenomenon that only a Buddha could have. He gently raised the purple gold arms bowl. Return. With a light shout, the mouth of the purple gold arms bowl immediately bloomed with Buddha light, as if a golden Buddha world appeared in the arms bowl. The purple gold arms bowl released a heaven-devouring power, wanting to suck Jiu Fei into the auspicious Buddhist kingdom in the arms bowl. The entire void shook a few times. The destructive energy descending from the sky was actually guided and blocked by the purple gold arms bowl, and all of it was devoured by the purple gold arms bowl. Preposterous! Jiu Fei cursed in his heart, but he did not withdraw his killing move. Instead, he took a second step towards little monk Fan Xiu. The power of destruction was surging under his feet. The purple gold arms bowl in the little monk Fan Xiu's hand kept vibrating, as if there was a Sanskrit sound that could cleanse one's soul. Even though the purple gold arms bowl displayed the power to devour heaven and earth, it was still unable to completely dissolve the power of Jiu Fei's second step. The second step of the 8 steps 8 kills was simply too powerful. It was difficult to completely block, guide, and devour it. Boom! Jiu Fei's foot stomped on the purple gold arms bowl fiercely. The powerful force directly caused the purple gold arms bowl that little monk Fan Xiu was holding to flicker and sink. Little monk Fan Xiu only felt a strong force coming from the purple gold arms bowl. The arm that was holding the purple gold arms bowl was immediately shaken to the point of numbness. Just as Jiu Fei and little monk Fan Xiu exchanged blows, the sharp saber radiance that was formed by the half of the peerless ominous saber flew towards the south again. Swoosh! The Buddha light flickered, and the nameless old monk suddenly appeared in front of the peerless ominous saber. Then, he directly reached out to grab the peerless ominous saber. The Buddha light burst out, and a huge golden hand appeared in front of the nameless old monk. 5 fingers were like divine pillars cast in gold, sealing the peerless ominous saber from all directions. Wherever the 5 fingers passed, the void also collapsed. A vast amount of Buddhist energy surged out from the golden hand. The great power sealed the entire void and intercepted the half of the peerless ominous saber. Ji Fei sneered. After stomping on little monk Fan Xiu, he immediately took a third step. This third step was not aimed at little monk Fan Xiu, but at the nameless old monk. Bam! The nameless old monk was immediately trampled down from the sky by Ji Fei, and the huge golden hand dissipated immediately. Boom! The nameless old monk was simply no match for Ji Fei. Buzz! At this time, the peerless ominous saber also felt the danger, and its murderous aura soared to the sky. It shook continuously, and the half of the saber released a dazzling saber radiance, cutting the void, and soared into the sky, trying to escape. The ominous saber had a spirit, and it would definitely not be subdued obediently. Ji Fei hurriedly took a step forward, and with the speed of 8 steps, he chased after it in an instant. Then, he stretched out his hand, and grabbed the other half of the ominous saber. His right hand emitted the power of the 5 elements, and there were 5 kinds of divine lights flickering. He was using the 5 elements catching technique, and wanted to subdue the other half of the ominous saber. The power of the 5 elements catching technique sealed the void, and the other half of the ominous saber was completely enveloped by Ji Fei's power. It could be said that it was easy to subdue it. However, at this time, an auspicious Sanskrit sound was heard, as if thousands of Buddhas were chanting. This auspicious Sanskrit sound entered Ji Fei's ears, and it was more terrifying than any sound attack. Ji Fei only felt that his divine soul was shaken, and his Niwen palace was trembling. The divine soul in his Niwen palace was actually showing signs of being pulled out of his body. Although the Sanskrit sound was incomparably auspicious, it directly shook Ji Fei's divine soul. His outstretched hand froze in the void. The 5 elements catching technique actually collapsed on its own, and the power of the 5 elements condensed into a finger dissipated in the void. The Sanskrit sound lingered, causing Ji Fei to feel drowsy. His divine soul was about to fall into endless darkness, and his rainbow-like battle intent actually turned peaceful. The legendary Buddhist chant of Devanaga? Ji Fei suddenly woke up, and then he raised his head to the sky and let out a long roar. The rumbling sound waves spread out, and the might of this roar even scattered the clouds in the sky. The Sanskrit sound that lingered in the air was immediately dispersed. Damn it! Ji Fei roared, and directly struck out the mountain and river cauldron, suppressing the little monk Fan Xiu. Primordial chaos chi descended from the mountain and river cauldron, and like a chaotic divine mountain, it descended towards the little monk Fan Xiu. He no longer held back. This little monk was really despicable. He had teamed up with the demon to break through the 9 mountains, but this guy suddenly jumped out at this time, wanting to take advantage of the situation. How could there be such a thing in the world? Seeing Ji Fei strike out with the mountain and river cauldron, even the little monk Fan Xiu was immediately moved. If the mountain and river cauldron displayed its extreme power, even a real Buddha would have a headache. At the same time, swoosh! A purple divine light rushed out from Ji Fei's dantian, and slashed towards the nameless old monk who was collecting the half of the peerless saber. A shocking sword aura that made everyone's heart palpitate immediately appeared in the sky, and the surrounding temperature plummeted. Chapter 6:11. Ji Fei finally attacked with all his might. He used the mountain and river cauldron to suppress little monk Fan Xiu and swung the purple gold divine sword, which turned into a sharp sword light that was like purple lightning. It cut through the void and slashed at the nameless old monk. Under Ji Fei's full power, the Extreme Path treasure faintly displayed a hint of the Extreme Path's power. Rumble, the mountain and river cauldron, which was surrounded by primordial chaos chi, grew to the size of a mountain and covered the entire sky. It was as if hundreds of thousands of ancient divine mountains were descending. The void below the mountain and river cauldron collapsed and the power of destruction spread across the sky. Even little monk Fan Xiu could not remain calm at this moment. Boom! A brilliant Buddhist light suddenly burst out from little monk Fan Xiu's skinny body. The space where he was standing was immediately shattered by the mighty Buddhist power that came out from his body. The shadow of a Buddha appeared on little monk Fan Xiu's body. He was holding a flower and smiling as he sat cross-legged on the 9-grade lotus platform. The Buddha power shook the heavens and the earth as if a real Buddha had descended. Swoosh! The green jade ring blade rushed out of little monk Fan Xiu's body. On the blade, there was an aquamarine saber chi that was like water ripples. It was extremely sharp but also had a hint of peace. It was clearly a weapon for killing, but it had a hint of peace. This green jade ring blade that was refined by the ancient Buddha was really a strange Buddhist sacred weapon. After the green jade ring blade rushed out of little monk Fan Xiu's body, he grabbed it in his hand. Then, without hesitation, he slashed the blade upwards. The aquamarine saber light shot up into the sky and turned into an aquamarine divine rainbow. It broke through the sky and slashed towards the mountain and river cauldron that was pressing down. The dazzling saber radiance illuminated the entire world in emerald green. The boundless Buddhist energy turned into a shocking saber radiance. Around the saber radiance, one could vaguely see the Buddhist Tao patterns faintly appearing. On the other side, the nameless old monk did not dare to take the purple gold divine sword head-on. He hurriedly broke the void and dodged. At this moment, a jade hand that seemed to be carved out of divine jade suddenly reached out from the side and grabbed the half of the peerless blade that was about to fly away. When Ji Yu Fei saw the peerless ominous saber being taken away, his eyes turned red. He had spent so much effort just to obtain this peerless ominous saber from the 9 mountains. With a thought, he directly drove the purple gold divine sword, which had missed its target, towards the jade-like hand that was holding onto the peerless murderous saber. He wanted to take back the peerless murderous saber. The unparalleled sword chi tore the void apart and destroyed everything. Under the sword light, everything that was tangible and intangible was destroyed. It was simply endless. This was the power of an extreme path sacred weapon. Even if it didn't unleash its full power, it could still slash through the void and kill supreme experts. Boom! Just as Ji Yu Fei drove the purple gold divine sword towards the jade-like hand, there was a loud bang. The mountain and river cauldron and the green jade ring blade collided violently. The primordial chaos chi that was released from the mountain and river cauldron was the most primordial origin chi in the world. It was as heavy as 100,000 divine mountains. The green jade ring blade's saber light shattered and turned into specks of aquamarine starlight that dissipated into the void. Little monk Fan Xiu was sent flying. A trace of golden blood seeped out of his hands that were holding the blade. The violent power of the mountain and river cauldron had not only shattered the saber light, it had also ruptured the webbing between his thumb and index finger. Mountain and river cauldron. Little monk Fan Xiu was sent flying thousands of feet away before he stopped. He stood with his blade in hand and looked at the mountain and river cauldron in front of him, which seemed to be shrouded by a chaotic void. He said in a low voice. The webbing between his thumb and index finger was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The golden blood that flowed out also retreated and disappeared under his skin. Little monk Fan Xiu's body was also extremely strong. Rumble, the mountain and river cauldron, which was as large as a mountain, flew up nearly 100 feet. The primordial chaos chi was vast and mighty, and the power that the mountain and river cauldron emitted froze the entire void. Under the suppression of the cauldron of mountain and river, the nameless old monk fell out of the void. The void was frozen by the power of the cauldron of mountain and river. The nameless old monk could no longer shatter the void and use his teleportation technique. The nameless old monk was in a sorry state. He felt that the void around him was about to solidify into divine metal. Although he was not really frozen in the void, the movement of his body was affected. The jade-like hand that had grabbed the peerless murderous blade also stopped for a moment under the power of the mountain and river cauldron. At this moment, the sword light formed by the purple gold divine sword had already arrived. The jade-like hand could not avoid the strangulation of the purple gold divine sword. However, it directly waved the peerless murderous blade in its hand and slashed at the purple gold divine sword. Swoosh! A dazzling saber light shot out from the peerless murderous blade that the jade-like hand was holding. It cut through the void and met the purple gold divine sword. A domineering and extremely tragic aura immediately filled the air. When the peerless murderous blade appeared, its murderous aura soared into the sky and the blade dominated the world. This shocking blade will made one's heart palpitate. Those with a lower level of cultivation would probably not be able to withstand this aura without even exchanging blows. Clang! The sound of metal clashing resounded through the 9 heavens and reverberated between heaven and earth. After the peerless murderous blade and the purple gold divine sword collided, an endless amount of sword chi and saber chi exploded like a flash flood. Like thousands of sabers and swords, the extremely sharp sword chi and the extremely fierce saber chi shot out in all directions. They were like peerless weapons, piercing through the void and destroying the world. Wherever the sword light and saber light passed, they left behind a pitch-black spatial crack. Therefore, countless spatial cracks appeared between heaven and earth. Boom! The owner of the jade-like hand appeared in the void. Her body trembled and the void trembled violently. The countless sword light and saber chi that pierced towards her were all shattered. They could not even get close to that person. However, Jiyu Fei did not have the ability to directly shatter the sword light and saber light emitted by the peerless treasures like the person who had suddenly appeared. When the purple gold divine sword and the peerless murderous blade collided, he had already retreated and arrived below the mountain and river cauldron. When the endless sword light and saber chi exploded, the mountain and river cauldron shook continuously and released wisps of chaotic primordial chi that sealed the void and protected Jiyu Fei inside. Although the sword light and saber light that broke through the void had great power that could even destroy the void, they were all blocked outside of Jiyu Fei's body. It took no effort at all, haha. The person held the half of the peerless murderous blade and did not care about the sharpness of the peerless murderous blade. He laughed loudly and his voice shook the sky. Everyone was shocked. No one had thought that in the Hell Realm, besides Li Xuandao of the Shun clan, the unlucky guy whose fruit of Wei had been taken by Jiyu Fei, the black-haired demon, and the little monk Fan Xiu, there was a fourth person with heaven-defying cultivation. Moreover, this person had actually been hiding at the side and only suddenly made a move at this time, successfully taking away the half of the peerless murderous blade. Jiyu Fei and the black-haired demon had expended a lot of effort to break through the 9 mountains. The black-haired demon had even risked being obliterated by the ancient god and Buddha formations and did not hesitate to use the blood of the true demon to break through the formations. However, all the efforts of Jiyu Fei and the black-haired demon had been in vain after the person took away the peerless murderous blade. In the end, they had actually benefited others. Swoosh! The purple sword light flashed and the purple gold divine sword flew back into Jiyu Fei's hand. The divine sword vibrated gently and Jiyu Fei could feel a strong battle intent coming from the purple gold divine sword's sword soul. The peerless murderous blade had stimulated the sword soul's battle intent. Roar! Jiyu Fei roared into the sky, his long hair dancing wildly. He was furious and his eyes had turned red. He stood under the mountain and river cauldron and pointed at the mysterious person holding the peerless murderous blade. He shouted angrily, "Who are you?" His battle intent was like a rainbow. He would never let the mysterious person take away the half of the peerless murderous blade so easily. At this time, the terrifying power that erupted from the 9 stone men's self-destruction was still wreaking havoc between heaven and earth, but it was gradually weakening. The sky and the earth that had been pierced through were gradually repairing themselves. As long as the realm pearl, the source of this dead world, was not destroyed, the world would not truly collapse. The power of heaven and earth would automatically repair the collapsed void. Jade Bone Demon, before the mysterious man could reply, a voice that seemed to come from a faraway void rang out. Although this voice wasn't very loud, it reached the ears of everyone present, including the divine race members who had already retreated thousands of miles away. "Hehe, you old antique, you actually didn't die even after that. You're really lucky." The layer of light that enveloped the mysterious person gradually dissipated. When everyone present saw the mysterious person's true appearance, they couldn't help but be shocked. This mysterious person was very strange. Although he had the appearance of a human, at a glance, they could tell that this mysterious person was definitely not human. The mysterious person's skin was actually the same as the jade hand that grabbed the peerless murderous blade. It was also crystal clear and flickered with a little brilliance. His skin and flesh were like divine jade. Furthermore, his skin and flesh were actually transparent. One could see the bones beneath his skin and flesh. The bones under the skin were also crystal clear like divine jade. This mysterious person looked like a jade man that was carved out of a peerless piece of divine jade. "You are not dead yet. How can I die so easily?" The ethereal voice in the void rang out once again. At this time, Jiyu Fei, Fan Xiu, the little monk, and the others had already sensed the source of the voice. The voice had actually come from the ground that had been pierced by the 9 stone men's self-destruction. That demon is not dead. Chapter 6:12. It was unbelievable that the self-destruction of the 9 stone golems had failed to destroy the demon's soul. Could it be that not even the power of the great Tao could kill a carnate divine demon? Rumble, the ground that had been pierced through was shaking, and a demonic aura that made everyone's heart palpitate emanated from the pitch-black bottomless abyss. The 5-elemental devil originates from the 5 elements and is one of the 5 evils of the world. Earth demon, others might not know your background, but I do. Stop trying to be mysterious and come out. Jadebone demon, whose body was glowing, stared at the pitch-black hole below and said gravely, "Damn. The origin of that ferocious devil." In the distant sky, the old tortoise couldn't help but be shocked when he heard the Jadebone devil's words. Others might not know what the 5 evils of the world were, but he did. At the beginning of the world, righteous and evil mutually countered each other. The power of the 5 elements gave birth to the 5-elemental divine being, but at the same time, it also gave birth to the 5-elemental primordial demon. The 5-elemental primordial demon was born from the power of the 5 evils of the world. The demon trapped in the hell realm is the primitive earth demon. The divine monarchs of the celestial race were also stunned by the Jadebone devil's words. They were the disciples and grand disciples of the supreme Tao ancestor, so they naturally knew some secrets of the world that outsiders didn't. They knew the origin of the 5-elemental primordial demon. "Jadebone devil, you better behave yourself in front of me." A sinister voice came from the bottomless abyss formed by the collapse of the ground. Those words seemed to contain some sort of strange power. When they entered one's ears, it caused one to feel an indescribable sense of irritation. One would want to shout loudly and vent one's anger. The words of the primitive earth demon were filled with a demonic nature that could affect the mental state of everyone present. Although it wasn't enough to trigger the inner demons hidden in the depths of their hearts, it was enough to make it difficult for them to maintain their fighting mentality. "Brat, we're in big trouble now. The primitive earth demon is not to be trifled with." The old turtle told Jiyu Fei telepathically about the black-haired demon's origins. Preposterous, a fiend god born from heaven and earth, this. After learning of the black-haired devil's origins, Jiyu Fei couldn't help but be dumbfounded. The background of the other party was simply too great. This was definitely the most ancient demon in the world, a terrifying existence on the same level as the legendary innate gods. The era that the primordial earth demon lived in was much older than the ancient era that the Buddhist masters, the supreme Tao ancestors, the supreme martial progenitors, and the other extreme martial progenitors lived in. It was hard to imagine how the Buddhist lord and the supreme Tao ancestor managed to seal the primordial great demon in the hell realm. An extreme expert was actually as strong as an innate divine demon. This was also one of the reasons why Jiyu Fei was inexplicably shocked. This also meant that the acquired cultivation was limitless. As long as one was able to comprehend the Tao and draw upon the energy of the grand Tao to augment oneself, one would be able to become the strongest existence in the world. Humph. You've been sealed by the Buddhist Lord and the supreme Tao ancestor for countless years. The force of the heavens and earth in this world is constantly depleting your strength. You're extremely weak now, what's the point? The jade-boned demon said in a deep voice. A strange, crystal-clear force flowed on its skin. The jade-boned demon's body was too strange, as if it was carved out of peerless godly jade. Its body possessed a terrifying demonic energy. Ha ha! Amid the laughter, a figure emerged from the bottomless hole under the ground. Even so, it's more than enough to kill you. It was a young man with black hair and a pale face. His long hair drifted wildly in the wind as he attacked the jade-boned demon in the sky. A pitch-black demonic hand sprang forward and expanded to the size of a mountain. It emitted a formidable demonic force and grabbed at the jade-boned demon. Enveloped by the demon hand, a part of the void was directly shattered by the demon hand's demonic power. Not only did the demon hand not die, but it also became even more powerful. The destructive force from the self-destruction of the 9 stone golems pierced through the sky and earth. At this moment, the shattered sky and earth had yet to recover. Everyone stayed far away from the void zone that had turned into primal chaos and nothingness. The jade-boned demon was hundreds of miles away from the shattered earth. However, the primordial earth demon arrived as soon as he said he would. The true demon hand shattered the void and reached the jade-boned demon in an instant. The hand blocked the sky and emitted a vast demonic force that sealed the entire void. It slammed down on the jade-boned demon like it was swatting a fly. Do you still think that you're the primordial earth demon who fought everywhere in the world? The jade-boned demon sneered. He was not nervous at all in the face of the demonic hand. As he spoke, he waved the broken half of the peerless saber in his hand and slashed at the true demon hand. Whoosh! The brutal and domineering saber aura surged and split the sky and earth, splitting the true demon hand in half. Then, the jade-boned demon rushed through the broken hand and charged at the primordial earth demon. The peerless saber emitted a domineering and brutal killing intent. The entire world shook violently under the impact of the saber aura. The two demons did not seem to be on the same side. They actually started fighting. The little monk Fan Xiu did not make a move. The little monk was very shrewd. He looked at the demon fighting in the sky quietly. No one knew what he was thinking. As for Ji Yufei, with the mountain and river cauldron above his head and the purple-gold divine sword in his hand, he stared coldly at the scene in front of him. Although he was furious, he did not let it get to his head. Since the little monk Fan Xiu did not make a move, he was also watching. He did not want to give the little monk Fan Xiu another chance. As for the old tortoise, Hei Tian, and the Protoss, they did not dare to approach. They watched from afar. A battle between mighty beings like this was not something they could interfere with. The old tortoise, the Protoss clan leader Li Jingxie, and the hierarch Li Fan were all super experts. They were only one step away from the realm of mighty beings, but they were still not mighty beings. If they were not mighty beings, they would only die if they went forward. The jade-boned demon held the broken half of the peerless saber and fought the primordial earth demon. The saber radiance soared into the sky and the aura of the peerless saber filled the world. Hum! The mountain and river cauldron floating above Ji Yufei trembled slightly as it felt the aura of the peerless saber. This supreme treasure was a divine treasure that had already given birth to a cauldron soul. It wanted to soar into the sky and fight against the peerless saber. Ji Yufei could feel the raging battle intent from the cauldron soul. However, he could not let the cauldron fly because he did not want to help the primordial earth demon. He knew very well that these guys would eventually become his rivals for the Hell Realm. Ji Yufei could not wait for the jade-boned demon and the primordial earth demon to fight to the death. Kid, why don't we join forces and kill this jade-boned demon first? Suddenly, the primordial earth demon's voice rang in Ji Yufei's mind. The primordial earth demon still had the time to talk to him in the middle of a battle. This demon. Ji Yufei's heart skipped a beat. This demon seemed to be at ease. What was going on? The 9 stone golems self-destructed and unleashed a devastating attack. Why was this guy unharmed? Chapter 613. The primordial demon wanted Ji Yufei to join hands and destroy the jadebone demon, but Ji Yufei would never work for this demon, so he refused. Working together required mutual benefits as the foundation. Ji Yufei wouldn't gain anything from dealing with the jadebone devil. It was a strenuous and unrewarding task. Only a fool would do such a thing. The jadebone demon was unstoppable. The half-broken saber in his hand swept in all directions. The domineering saber radiance traveled thousands of feet, splitting the void and splitting the world. Wherever the saber light passed, it was indestructible, leaving behind pitch-black spatial cracks. With the saber in hand, the jadebone demon was like a reincarnated war demon. He broke through several of the primordial demon's terrifying demonic arts and reached the primordial demon. Whoosh! The Jadebone demon raised the saber and brought it down on the primordial demon. The dazzling saber radiance lit up the gloomy world. The murderous aura even dispersed the dark clouds in the sky. Even Jiyu Fei, who was watching from afar, felt a wave of coldness wash over him. The chilling saber radiance spread out, causing the temperature of the world to plummet. This saber. Jiyu Fei stared at the dazzling saber radiance, his eyes flashing. At this moment, the saber radiance seemed to have become the only thing in the world, exuding a murderous aura that made one's heart palpitate. This was only a half-broken saber, yet it already possessed such terrifying power. It was hard to imagine how powerful this peerless saber would be when it was in perfect condition. Whoosh! To think that the primordial demon's body was sliced into two. Seeing this scene, Jiyu Fei's eyes popped out. No way. But then, he realized that something was amiss. The primordial demon would not fall for this easily. The divine eyes of the immortal path emerged from his brow, opened, and scanned forward. It was an afterimage, not the real body of the primordial great demon. The real body of the primordial great demon had already fled into the void. Even with Jiyu Fei's immortal Dao divine eye, it was almost impossible to capture primordial great demon's figure. With his immortal Dao divine eyes, Jiyu Fei saw a few extremely faint shadows flashing around the Jadebone demon, as if a few people were attacking it at the same time. Roar! Jadebone demon sensed the danger. He roared and swung his saber in all directions. Unparalleled saber chi shot out in all directions, turning the space around him into an ocean of saber chi. Demonic diagram devours heaven and earth. The roar of the primordial demon came from the void. Then, a complete demon diagram suddenly rushed out of the void. Not only did it block the peerless blade aura, it also enveloped the demon of Jadebone. Above the demonic diagram, demonic chi surged. Countless mysterious demonic runes appeared, and Daoist rhymes circulated around it. After that, a world appeared above the diagram, giving birth to a heaven-devouring force that swallowed the Jadebone demon into the diagram. Demonic energy surged, as if a world was about to burst out of the demon diagram. Within the endless demonic energy, mountains and rivers could be vaguely seen, emitting waves of energy. This was the complete demon diagram, not the half. There was a world within the diagram. Could it be? The 9 Mountains Savage Grounds is the other half of the diagram? Jiyu Fei couldn't help but be astonished. He had once seen this ferocious devil fight against little monk Fan Xiu with only half a diagram, but this time, the diagram was complete. Only little monk Fan Xiu and the nameless old monk's expressions remained unchanged. Their expressions were peaceful, as if they were Buddhas, displaying a merciful aura. It was as if they knew this would happen. Seeing the complete demon diagram, they did not move, not even a trace of emotion could be seen on their faces. Jiyu Fei worked for nothing, but the primordial demon's luck was much better than Jiyu Fei's. He had clearly gotten what he wanted. The demon diagram swallowed the heaven and earth, displaying its demonic might. Even the void under the demon diagram collapsed and was swallowed into the diagram. The power of the complete demon diagram was unimaginable. This is what you get for underestimating me. The primitive great demon stretched out a hand. The demonic diagram fluttered and immediately flew back to the primitive great demon. Demonic energy surged, and the world that emerged from the diagram gradually disappeared into it. After the demon diagram swallowed the demon of Jadebone, one could vaguely see a small silhouette dashing left and right, trying to break out of the diagram. The powerful demon of Jadebone lost just like that. Everyone who witnessed this scene was shocked. The demon of Jadebone had the terrifying strength to challenge the primordial demon. How did he lose so easily? Just a struggle before death. The primordial demon seemed to be very confident in his demon treasure. He waved his hand, and the demon diagram immediately spread out before him. Then, the primal demon of primal origin sent out lines of demonic patterns to the demonic diagram before him. The patterns sank into the diagram, and the scenery of the world on the diagram began to gradually turn into paintings imprinted on the diagram. The world inside the demon diagram was changing, being sealed into a picture. The demon diagram shook and fluttered. The primordial demon wanted to completely destroy the demon of Jadebone. Roar. You want to stop me? Not unless you recover your invincible cultivation. The Jadebone demon roared again and again in the demonic diagram. The half of the peerless saber in his hand emitted a tyrannical and horrifying saber chi that slashed in all directions. The mountains in the demonic diagram collapsed under the saber light. The deadly blade aura was vaguely coming out of the demon diagram. The demon diagram seemed to be unable to stop the blade, and of course, could not stop the demon of Jadebone. How dare you? The primordial demon activated his demonic power. Mysterious demonic marks condensed between his hands and imprinted themselves on the demon diagram before him. However, no matter how he cast demonic secret arts and formed demonic marks, he could not completely destroy the demon of Jadebone and the blade. This thing of yours is not very powerful. I'm done playing with you. The demon of Jadebone seemed to be very relaxed in the demon diagram. As he spoke, the blade in the demon of Jadebone's hand shone with an extremely bright light. The demon diagram could not suppress this brutal blade aura at all. Rumble. The mountains in the demonic diagram continued to crumble as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting apart. The demonic diagram shook violently as demonic chi surged violently. Countless demonic patterns appeared, and each demonic pattern emitted a bright light as the power of the Tao circulated above them. The demon diagram did not collapse, but the world within the demon diagram was nearly destroyed and turned into a chaotic void. Roar. The demon of Jadebone roared to the sky. He raised the blade with all his might. His jade-like face turned ferocious, and a strange demonic power surged around him. Break. The demon of Jadebone roared madly. He used all the power in his body and slashed. Kai. Like a fine piece of silk being cut open by a pair of sharp scissors, the blade aura shot out from the blade was tens of thousands of meters long. Wherever the blade aura went, there was nothing it could not destroy. Where the blade aura pointed, even the demon diagram that the primordial demon of Jadebone had refined for countless years was cut open by the blade aura. The blurry world inside the diagram seemed to be cut in half by the blade aura. The primordial demon was shocked. He was standing right in front of the demon diagram, and was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. The extremely terrifying blade aura came out of the demon diagram and slashed towards him. Damn it! The primordial demon of Jadebone roared. He could no longer care about the demon glyphs and the demon of Jadebone. He shattered the void and dodged. In the next moment, this tyrannical and extremely powerful saber shot up high into the sky, the incomparably fierce saber chi. Swoosh! It was like a piece of cloth being torn apart, and it sliced open a rift that was over 10 kilometers long in the heavens and the earth in space. In the end, the peerless saber glow slowly withdrew and dimmed, before disappearing into the rift. The demon of Jadebone broke the demon diagram and rushed out. At this moment, a huge cauldron silently appeared before the demon of Jadebone and slammed towards him. The huge cauldron came too suddenly. The demon of Jadebone had forced the primordial demon of Jadebone back. He did not expect someone to attack him at this time. He had nowhere to run. More accurately, he was the one who rammed into the cauldron. Bang! The huge cauldron made the most intimate contact with the demon of Jadebone who had just rushed out of the demon diagram. Boom! The huge cauldron shook violently and displayed a trace of extreme power. Chaotic primordial energy exploded and the demon of Jadebone flew back screaming. He flew for dozens of li before he stopped. The violent collision even knocked the demon of Jadebone's blade out of his hand. A large hand reached out from the side and grabbed the peerless ominous saber that had been sent flying. Jadebone demon roared crazily. He had never been so angry before. His eyes, which were as bright as jade, instantly turned red. At this moment, the demon of Jadebone seemed to have gone mad. His jade-like jade body was filled with cracks. It was like an exquisite jade artifact had exploded. No blood seeped out. Only the white, misty demonic energy seeped out from the cracked skin. It was extremely strange. Die. The Jadebone demon was enraged. His entire body emitted a dazzling demonic light as he charged towards the person who ambushed him. The person who dared to ambush him, If he didn't tear the person's body into 1,000 pieces, he wouldn't be able to vent his anger. Chapter 614. This was originally mine. I'm just taking back what belongs to me, Gu Fei said in a deep voice as he stared at the charging Jadebone demon with the other half of the peerless ominous saber in his hand. The Jadebone demon was not a carnate divine demon born from heaven and earth, but it was comparable to a carnate divine demon. However, just like the primordial great demon, it seemed to have suffered unimaginable damage. Its demonic body had problems, and it no longer had the terrifying cultivation it once had. But even so, when this demon went all out, its ferocity was unparalleled. Boundless demonic energy shook the heavens and the earth. Blazing demonic light pierced through the void and shattered it. It was as if it was traversing through the primal chaos, directly attacking Gu Fei. Gu Fei's sneak attack made the Jadebone demon feel the greatest humiliation. He wanted nothing more than to tear Gu Fei to pieces, to destroy Gu Fei's divine soul forever, so that Gu Fei would suffer the pain of soul refinement, unable to reincarnate. For an expert like Gu Fei, even if his physical body was destroyed, he would not die. As long as he had enough time, he would be able to reconstruct his physical body. Only by destroying his powerful spirit would one be able to truly kill such an existence. This was also why even if a supreme warrior died, the indestructible martial body would still exist. It was because the martial body was indestructible and could exist forever in the world. However, if one's soul was shattered, even a supreme warrior with an indestructible martial body would have to bear a grudge. 9 heavenly layers of demon. The Jadebone demon roared. His entire body emitted endless demonic light. This demonic light was not as black as ink, but as gentle as moonlight, illuminating the entire world. Rumble, as if the 9 heavens and earth were descending, endless demonic light enveloped the world, turning into 9 layers of heavenly curtains. 9 hazy worlds came crashing down on Gu Fei. The terrifying demonic power directly shook the entire Hell Dao. The Jadebone demon was going all out. One could imagine how angry he was. Buzz. The mountain and river cauldron floating above Gu Fei's head began to vibrate. Primordial chaos energy surged, and an ancient aura that seemed to originate from the primal chaos surged. The cauldron of mountain and river displayed a sliver of the divine might of the extreme Tao. Heaven and earth seemed to have transformed into a piece of divine metal. Even the void space was frozen. The 9 layers of sky screen descended and collided with the mountain river cauldron. The mountain river cauldron stabilized a part of the world and blocked the descending first layer of sky screen. Damn it! The Jadebone demon was above the 9 demonic heavens as he roared angrily. There was no reason for him not to recognize the mountain and river cauldron. This was because the era he lived in was the primordial era where the ancient Buddhist lord and the supreme Tao ancestor rose together. The mountain river cauldron was an extreme sacred weapon refined by a ruthless person. During the Desolate Era, the true use of the mountain river cauldron was not for fighting, but for controlling the earth, rivers, and mountains. As the mountain river cauldron contained a wisp of primordial chaos chi, it was able to stabilize a part of the world. The first level of the 9-tier demonic heavens was blocked by the mountain river cauldron without any suspense. Rumble, the second layer of the demonic sky descended again, and it was as if a whole world was faintly discernible within the hazy demonic light, emitting a destructive aura that made one's heart palpitate. It was as if heaven and earth were destroying all life. The Jadebone devil seemed to have attracted the might of heaven and earth. Peng! The second layer of the demonic sky pressed down, causing the mountain river cauldron to tremble violently. The void that was enveloped by the demonic sky instantly shattered. The power displayed by the second layer of the demonic sky was extremely terrifying. The mountain river cauldron seemed to have stabilized a part of the world. Endless demonic power surged out from the second layer of the demonic sky, shattering and destroying everything. However, the ancient cauldron was like a primordial divine mountain that was fixed in the void. Although it trembled repeatedly, it was not pushed down by the second layer of the demonic sky. Good. The mountain river cauldron lives up to its name. The Jadebone devil stood above the 9-tier demonic heavens and shouted loudly. The third layer of the demonic sky immediately descended from the sky. Ji Fei sneered. He rushed into the sky and stood above the mountain river cauldron. He raised his head and looked up. His left hand gripped the saber and his right hand held the purple-gold divine sword. His long hair danced in the wind and he looked extremely powerful. He was not a person who would let others attack him without retaliating. He was a person who could distinguish between gratitude and grudges. Jadebone Demon had gone too far. First, he had snatched the other half of the peerless ominous saber. Then, after the peerless ominous saber was taken back by Ji Fei, he had been entangled with Ji Fei endlessly. One should know that the reason why he spent so much effort to attack the 9 mountains was because of this half of the saber. At this time, little monk Fan Xiu and the demon of primordial origin were watching from the sidelines. They had no intention of making a move. They wanted nothing more than for Ji Fei and the Jade Bone Devil to fight to the bitter end. If Ji Fei and the Jade Bone Devil were to fight to the bitter end, then there would be 2 less people to fight for the world origin orb of the Naraka realm. There was no one who did not covet the Naraka realm left behind by the ancient Buddha. Everyone wanted to refine this world of death, become its master, and revitalize the death world. The time of the death world must be reopened by their own hands. This was everyone's ultimate goal. Even if the 9 dragons' fight for the pearl was defeated, a great battle was unavoidable. An almost perfect world was enough to make even the strongest go crazy. Ancestor. Bastard. Boss. The celestial race, the old tortoise, Erebus, and the others couldn't help but feel nervous. This was especially true for the old tortoise who knew of the Jade Bone Demon's origins. Although this demon wasn't an innate god born from the heaven and earth, it was comparable to one. Among the post-celestial great demons, the Jade Bone Demon was definitely one of the top figures. In ancient times, there was a rumor that the Jade Bone Demon had once encountered a Tao ancestor who had yet to attain the Tao and was able to escape unscathed from the battle. Anyone who could understand the great Tao and become an extreme Tao expert was without a doubt a brilliant talent. At a young age, they were already outstanding and looked down on their peers. Regardless of whether the Jade Bone Devil had fought with a Tao ancestor before attaining Tao, the existence of such a rumor was enough to prove the terror and strength of the Jade Bone Devil. Ji Fei did not know of the Jade Bone Devil's origins. As the saying goes, a newborn calf is not afraid of a tiger. He dared to point his sword at the primordial demon and the Jade Bone Devil, his battle intent surging. Boom! The mountain and river cauldron shook violently. Primordial chaos chi surged violently and rolled up against the sky. It shattered the first demon sky, pierced through the second demon sky, and shook the third demon sky. The terrifying power shook the heavens and the earth. Ji Fei stood on the mountain and river cauldron and pointed his sword at the Jade Bone Devil who stood above the 9th demon sky. A terrifying pressure emanated from his body. At this moment, he was extremely powerful. Rumble, the mountain and river cauldron stabilized the descending third demon sky and then rose up. Ji Fei was like a peerless deity. His body emitted endless divine light as he pressed towards the Jade Bone Devil above the 9th demon sky. The descending third demonic sky was shaking violently. The blurry world seemed like it could completely collapse at any moment. The 9th demon sky was a terrifying mystique cultivated by the Jade Bone Devil. With supreme demonic power, it evolved the 9 heavens imperial court. When it descended, it was as if the 9 heavens were descending. It could obliterate all tangible and intangible things that shrouded the 9th demon sky. However, this 9th demon sky had been broken by Ji Fei. The third demon sky was also on the verge of collapse. The Jade Bone Devil was shocked. Ji Fei's strength had already exceeded his expectations. Ji Fei channeled the power of his peerless immortal physique. The immortal Tao's divine power surged violently. Rays of divine light flowed around his body like divine lightning. He had yet to use the Heaven Ascension mystic technique. Ji Fei stepped on the mountain and river cauldron and went against the heavens. The mountain and river cauldron emitted a trace of extreme divine might. It directly shook the third demon sky. Without any suspense, the third demon sky also collapsed. Endless demonic light illuminated the heaven and earth. The third demon sky collapsed and transformed into extremely chaotic destructive energy. It tore through the void and destroyed everything. However, it was unable to cause any harm to Jiyu Fei. The primordial chaos chi emitted from the mountain and river cauldron completely repelled the destructive energy. Although the mountain and river cauldron could only temporarily emit a trace of extreme divine might, it was enough to make everyone present feel like they were no match for it. I want to see how many demon skies you can withstand. The Jade Bone Devil, who stood above the 9th demon sky, said sternly. His tone was extremely cold and suffocating. Rumble, the 4th demon sky began to descend from the sky. It was like a world of light. The resplendent white demonic light appeared extremely holy. However, it emitted a demonic aura that surged into the sky. This was a smokescreen. It was the Jade Bone Devil's specialty. The demonic aura that he cultivated was not black, but white. This demonic aura was unique. There was no other demon in the world that had demonic aura that was white. Furthermore, the Jade Bone Devil was very good at concealing his aura. He was able to prevent himself from having any demonic characteristics, making it difficult for others to tell that he was a demon. Jiyu Fei charged straight for the 4th demon sky. At the same time, he kept the purple gold divine sword and the ominous saber in his hands into his body. He threw a punch at the 4th demon sky. Watch me shatter the 9th demon sky. Jiyu Fei's long hair danced in the wind. His eyes were like cold stars. The entire heaven and earth trembled under his fist. Violent power surged in the sky like a raging sea. Boom! The heavens shook and the earth shook. Jiyu Fei's fist suddenly collided with the descending hazy world. The violent collision caused a dazzling light to erupt. It was as if 10 suns were shining in the sky, causing one to be unable to open their eyes. A huge wave of air swept out. Everywhere it passed, the void turned into chaos. The primordial demon, the little monk Fan Xiu, and the nameless old monk all retreated. It was as though a huge hole had been blasted in the heaven and earth. The destructive power spread in all directions. Even mighty figures could not help but be moved. A single punch tore through the heavens and earth, piercing through the firmaments. The 4th demonic sky was penetrated by Jiyu Fei's punch. The ferocious and domineering fist force went against the heavens, and even the 5th demonic sky was shaken. Chapter 6:15. Jiyu Fei's punch pierced through the 4th demonic sky. The violent and domineering fist energy directly shook the 5th demonic sky, causing the Jade Bone Devil to be moved. The 9th firmament Skyfiend divine power had not been able to break through 4 fiendish heavens consecutively, even against the Tao ancestor who had yet to attain the Tao. The combat strength Jiyu Fei demonstrated had already exceeded that of the Tao ancestor when he was young. Jiyu Fei's punch was no longer a simple divine technique of the immortal Tao. It was a fusion of the immortal Tao and the martial Tao, using the divine power of the immortal Tao to display a martial Tao battle technique. Since ancient times, no one had been able to cultivate 2 kinds of Tao at the same time and fuse them together to form this immortal martial Tao battle technique. There were 3,000 great Taos, but only one was chosen. One Tao was enough for a cultivator to ponder for a lifetime. It could be said that there were no people who could cultivate 2 Taos at the same time, but no one could reach the Tao. The combat power that Jiyu Fei displayed with his supreme immortal physique was comparable to a supreme almighty. This was an anomaly. There had never been a cultivator who could become an almighty by cultivating 2 different kinds of Taos. Of course, this was the power of the supreme immortal physique and not Jiyu Fei's true strength. His body was currently soaking in the divine spring of life within the supreme immortal physique's purple dantian. The divine race's distant ancestor Li Xuandao's inner world was simply a celestial land. It was full of vitality and even had several divine springs of life. Jiyu Fei's body was currently soaking in the largest divine spring, using the endless life essence to constantly cleanse his body, allowing more life force to fuse into his body. After his soul left his body, Jiyu Fei's body did not wither and lose its vitality. On the contrary, the blood within Jiyu Fei's body became more and more vigorous under the cleansing of the divine spring of life. It had to be said that a warrior's martial physique was truly mystical. Ji Yufei used the divine seizing mystic technique and his soul entered Li Xuandao's supreme immortal physique to seize his Dao fruit. However, the martial body was actually able to absorb the life essence of the divine spring on its own. As he sat cross-legged in the divine spring, there was a faint glow surging around his body. Ji Yufei's body sat in the lotus position inside the divine spring, absorbing life essence energy. Meanwhile, Ji Yufei's supreme immortal body was fighting the Jade Bone Devil outside. Roar! With a single punch, Ji Yufei broke through the descending fourth devil sky. Stepping on the mountain and river cauldron, he charged through the broken fourth devil sky. His long hair fluttered in the wind as he roared. Ji Yufei's body exuded a terrifying might that was like a mountain, causing people to feel an urge to look up at him. He was like a supreme existence, causing people's hearts to be filled with fear, and they felt as tiny as ants in front of him. This brat, Old Tortoise, who was watching from afar, could not help but be shocked. The battle strength that Ji Yufei had displayed was too shocking. Can boss defeat that guy? Hei Tian asked worriedly. Ji Yufei had only broken through 4 of the 9 heavenly demon heavens. There were still 5 more to go. The 9-layered demonic heavens. Each layer was stronger and more astonishing than the one before it. Although the strength was not stacked, it was like the 9 massive waves. Each wave was more ferocious and vast than the one before it. This brat hasn't used his trump card yet. Old Tortoise chuckled. If Ji Yufei used the ascending divine technique, the Jade Bone Devil would probably be in trouble. Ancestor, what's going on? At this time, Hierarch Li Fan, who was watching the battle from afar, seemed to have noticed something. He frowned and looked pensive. You noticed it too? While Li Fan was lost in thought, a voice came from beside him. Li Fan quickly turned his head and saw that the Shun race patriarch, Li Jingxie, was already standing beside him. Li Jingxie was staring at the unparalleled figure standing on the ancient cauldron. If I'm not mistaken, the ancestor is using the immortal path divine power to execute a martial path combat technique. Li Jingxie's eyes flickered, but his tone was extremely calm. The martial ancestor's combat technique? Although Li Fan was mentally prepared, he was still shocked. The immortal path and the martial path were 2 different paths. How can the ancestor know the martial ancestor's combat technique? How is this possible? Li Fan said in disbelief. In his opinion, the martial ancestor's combat technique would not appear in this world of death. The Shun race cultivated the orthodoxy passed down by the supreme martial ancestor. However, the legendary supreme martial ancestor who created the martial path combat technique did not establish a sect. After the supreme martial ancestor disappeared, the martial path was lost. I don't know either, but the ancestor's combat technique is definitely a martial path combat technique. I can't be wrong, Li Jingxie said in a deep voice. This. Li Fan couldn't accept Li Jingxie's words, but he had to believe it. What exactly happened to the ancestor? Could it be that the ancestor was trying to merge the immortal path with the martial path and create a new Dao? There were 3,000 great Daos in the cultivation world, but there was more than one type of Dao. Immortal path, martial path, Buddhist path, demon path, demonic path, etc. As long as one could break through and comprehend them, one would be able to achieve the Dao and become an extreme Dao expert. Among the Shun race patriarch, Li Jingxie, and ultimate god Li Fan felt uneasy, as if something bad was about to happen. However, little did they know that their ancestor's soul had already been destroyed by Ji Yufei. Even his soul force had been devoured by Ji Yufei's divine soul. In this world, there was no longer a person like Li Xuandao, the ancestor of the celestial race. Li Xuandao's fruit of the way had been taken by Ji Yufei, becoming Ji Yufei's greatest reliance in his conquest of the Naraka realm. Without Li Xuandao's Dao fruit, Ji Yufei would never have the right to compete with the primordial demon, Little Monk Fan Xiu, and the Jade Bone Demon for the underworld realm. One should know that Ji Yufei's true cultivation was only at the half-god realm. He wasn't even an immortal god. Experts like Little Monk Fan Xiu could easily crush him to death with a single hand. The half-god realm was considered the strongest existence in the Tenglong continent where the immortal gods were extinct, But in the underworld realm, even a half-god realm expert would be reduced to cannon fodder. Ji Fei had no idea that the two strongest ultimate god experts of the Shun race were already suspicious of him. What he needed to do now was to defeat the Jade Bone Demon and trample him under his feet. Boom! Ji Fei stepped on the cauldron of mountain and river and punched at the hazy world that was descending from the fifth layer. His entire fist emitted a dazzling divine light, as if a sun had appeared in the sky. The divine light illuminated the entire world. The fist force was like a raging river that surged up against the sky. The descending fifth devil sky shook violently from the impact of the fist force. Rumble! The hazy world seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Cracks appeared in the space. Ji Fei's punch did not make a hole in the fifth devil sky like it did in the fourth devil sky. Chapter 616. My goodness, this kid is clearly an immortal almighty. How can he execute a martial ancestor's heaven-defying battle skill? The nine-layered demon sky trembled. The Jadebone demon, who was standing in the middle of the nine-layered demon sky, finally felt nervous. The Jadebone demon would not be wrong. Ji Fei's body was refined by the immortal almighty for countless years. It was a peerless immortal physique that was comparable to the indestructible martial physique of a supreme martial artist. However, what confused the Jadebone demon was that despite being an immortal almighty, Qin Nan's every move had the shadow of an extreme-grade martial ancestor. The Jadebone demon had some understanding of the extreme-grade martial ancestor that was on par with the ancient Buddhist lord and the supreme martial ancestor. In the past, countless great demons had died in the hands of the extreme-grade martial ancestor. The extreme-grade martial ancestor was definitely the most terrifying extreme-grade killing god of the primordial era. Ji Fei's fist was as heavy as a mountain, shattering the heavens and earth. The terrifying fist force directly struck the five-layered demon sky, causing the hazy world to be filled with cracks. It was as if countless mountains and rivers were collapsing. The entire hazy world was boiling. The destructive force was boundless, as if it would collapse at any time. No matter how many remarkable abilities you have, no matter how powerful your techniques are, I'll break it with a single punch. The martial path that Ji Fei cultivated was a supreme technique that used strength to prove his Tao. At that moment, Ji Fei was like a supreme almighty that had descended to the world. His body emitted a blinding divine light. The immortal almighty force surged and shook the heavens. Punch after punch, the five-layered demon sky shook continuously. He stood on the mountain and river cauldron and used the primordial chaos chi to protect himself. He was impervious to all techniques. The destructive force of the five-layered demon sky could not even get close to him. Damn it! The Jadebone demon roared furiously and continuously unleashed her demonic force. The six-layered demon sky descended from the sky. The heavens and earth trembled as if a destructive world was descending from the sky, destroying everything. A terrifying energy fluctuation spread from the six-layered demon sky. Everyone's expression changed. The entire world of death was affected as a terrifying aura surged in the underworld realm. The countless undead creatures in the hell path were crying and howling in grief. It was as terrifying as the end of the world. The extremely stable hell Tao that was refined by the ancient Buddhist lord was also stirred by the power of the sixth demonic heaven. A terrifying aura emanated throughout the hell Tao. Bam! The descending sixth layer of the demonic heavens fused together above the fifth layer of the demonic heavens, increasing its might by several times. Rumble! A part of the destroyed world was descending. Ji Fei only felt his body sinking as an endless force pressed down on him. He was directly pushed down hundreds of feet by the mighty force. This ferocious demon is actually this powerful. Ji Fei was secretly shocked. The strength of the Jade Bone Devil had exceeded his expectations. Especially the Jade Bone Fiend's 9 first firmament Sky Fiend divine power. Every fiend firmament's strength increased as though it was infinite. If the 9th fiend firmament were to descend, the region that spanned 5,000 kilometers would probably be obliterated by him. Roar! Ji Fei roared angrily. His long hair danced about. He had no choice but to use the heaven-defying divine technique Ascend. Boom! The world shook. Ji Fei merely shook his body slightly and the entire void crumbled. Immortal Tao divine power erupted from his body, shocking the heavens as divine light illuminated the world. At this moment, the entire world of death could sense the mighty aura emitting from Ji Yufei's body. His entire body was resplendent, and divine flames surged. It was as if he was cast from violet gold divine iron. He was filled with a powerful aura, and even his hair was dyed with a purple divine splendor. It was as if a cluster of violet gold divine fire was throbbing. It was as though a supreme being had awoken. The violet gold divine light pierced through the void, and a terrifying power as vast as the ocean surged. An incomparably powerful aura erupted. This is one of the 9 esoteric secrets of the immortal Tao, Ascension divine art. Celestial race patriarch Li Jingxie and hierarch Li Fan nearly exclaimed when they saw this scene. Ji Yufei's power had risen to an unimaginable level in that instant. It was at least 10 times stronger than before. Brat, is he finally going to use his trump card? The old tortoise wasn't surprised. He would have found it strange if Ji Yufei hadn't used the Ascend secret technique. Ji Yufei had taught the Ascend secret technique to both the old tortoise and He Tian. However, the old tortoise was a monster while He Tian was an undying skeleton. Whether or not the former could master this heaven-defying divine technique was something even Ji Yufei didn't know. This guy has been hiding his true strength all this time? This again? Why did his strength suddenly increase tenfold? Is he using a secret technique that can instantly increase his strength? Little monk Fan Xiu and primordial demons' eyes lit up when they saw Ji Yufei's strength suddenly increase tenfold. They felt threatened. With Ji Yufei's cultivation, a tenfold increase in strength was infinitely close to a supreme existence. Even if they joined forces, they might not be able to suppress Ji Yufei. The Jadebone demon was out of luck. Little monk Fan Xiu and primordial demon both knew that the Jadebone demon had no chance. Even if he used the 9 heavenly layers of the heavenly demon, a terrifying demonic technique that could obliterate all things in the world, he had no chance of winning. As expected, Ji Yufei stepped on the cauldron of mountains and rivers and soared into the sky in one step. He charged straight into the blurry world where the 5th and 6th layers of the demonic sky had merged. With a slight shake of his body, the entire blurry world collapsed soundlessly. The void was quickly disintegrated and the power of destruction wreaked havoc in the world. Little monk Fan Xiu and primordial demon had no choice but to retreat. Ji Yufei swung his purple fist into the sky, displaying an indomitable aura. He didn't need to use any immortal techniques, nor did he need to use any heaven-defying battle skills. All he did was throw a simple punch. Boom! His every move was as heavy as a primordial divine mountain, causing the void to tremble and the world to shatter. The purple gold fist was like the fist of a celestial being. It collided with the descending 7th layer of the demonic sky, causing the sky to shake as if a tsunami had been set off. Without any suspense, the 7th layer of the demonic sky collapsed. Ji Yufei shot into the sky as if there was nothing in the world that could stop him. How is this possible? The Jadebone demon roared. His crystal-clear face was extremely ferocious as tiny cracks appeared on his demonic body. 7 of the 9 layers of the demonic sky were broken. The Jadebone demon's demonic body was greatly impacted. Roar! Die! The Jadebone demon roared madly as he channeled his demonic arts. Rumble! The 8th and 9th layer of the demonic sky descended from the sky. The destructive power spread out, causing the void within a radius of hundreds of kilometers to collapse and turn into chaotic nothingness. Spatial cracks that were tens of thousands of meters long extended out, covering the void within a radius of thousands of kilometers. The spatial cracks were like pitch-black lightning, posing a threat to the old tortoise and the Celestials. Everyone turned pale with fright as they hurriedly retreated further away. Ji Yufei didn't hesitate because he didn't have time to waste. He only had 3 minutes. If he couldn't defeat the Jadebone demon within these 3 minutes, he would be the unlucky one. Ji Yufei stepped on the mountain and river cauldron and guided the primordial chaos chi to protect himself. He went against the heavens and directly faced the descending 8th layer of the demonic sky. The power of the 8th layer was even more powerful and terrifying. In the misty world, countless blazing lightning flashed. It was a terrifying world that was completely filled with the power of destruction. If it were anyone else, they would have long retreated in the face of such a world. However, not only did Jiu Fei not retreat, he directly charged into the world. Haha, you are digging your own grave. The Jadebone demon laughed out loud. From his point of view, Jiu Fei's actions were undoubtedly extremely foolish. One had to know that in the 9 layers of celestial fiends, each layer was equivalent to an independent world. Of course, such a world was definitely not an inner world, but an offensive technique that was derived from supreme divine powers. However, even so, it was extremely dangerous for Jiu Fei to charge into such a void. This was because the Jadebone demon controlled everything in the void like an omnipotent god. Rumble, the 8th layer of the demonic sky, was shrinking. The Jadebone demon wanted to self-destruct the 8th layer of the demonic sky in a suicidal manner. He wanted to use the power produced by the 8th layer of the demonic sky to obliterate Jiu Fei. Thousands of lightning bolts wreaked havoc in the 8th layer of the demonic sky. The misty world that enveloped the world was rapidly shrinking. Jiu Fei's figure was already submerged in the endless lightning bolts. The entire 8th layer of the demonic sky finally shrunk to the size of a fist. It was like a pearl that emitted a resplendent white light. It was fixed high in the sky and emitted blinding demonic light. The power contained in the 8th layer of the demonic sky was compressed to the extreme, forming a fist-sized demonic ball. It was like a destructive star that was about to explode. Boom! Amidst an earth-shattering explosion, the demonic bead that was fixed high up in the sky suddenly exploded. The void was like a thin piece of paper, instantly torn into pieces by the explosive force. The void that spanned a radius of 500 kilometers was reduced to a chaotic void. The world was penetrated once again. The resulting energy fluctuations were nearly on par with the self-destruction of the 9 stone golems. Ha ha ha, you're dead now, aren't you? The Jadebone demon laughed maniacally. He was extremely happy. More and more cracks appeared on his demonic body, but he ignored them. The divine power of the 9th layer of celestial fiends was nearly destroyed. However, the 9th layer of the demonic sky remained floating in the void. It was as though there was no need for it. Boss, Darn Brat, Patriarch, Hei Tian, Old Tortoise, and the group of celestials were dumbfounded. Jiu Fei had already cast the Ascension Mystic technique, increasing his strength by 10 times. How could he be defeated? Impossible, it's absolutely impossible. Old Tortoise and company found it difficult to accept the outcome. Chapter 617. Very few people knew about the 9 secrets of Immortal Tao. Even in the Immortal Tao divine race, only a few of the most powerful divine venerable level super experts knew about them. The 9 secrets of Immortal Tao passed down by the Supreme Tao ancestor were incomplete. Ascension, Divine Snatch, and 3 Pure Ones were all part of the 9 secrets of Immortal Tao with heaven-defying powers. As for the 3 ancestors of the Shun clan, they had only inherited 2 secret arts. However, with the death of the other 2 ancestors, only Li Xuandao had mastered these 2 secret arts. The Divine Snatch and 3 Pure Ones were 2 of the heaven-defying secret techniques within the 9 secrets of Immortal Tao. Jiu Fei seized Li Xuandao's Tao fruit and fused it with Li Xuandao's memories, allowing him to master everything about Li Xuandao. One Qi turning into 3 Pure Ones could draw upon the power of the Great Tao and display the power of the Great Tao. However, the 3 divinities born from Li Xuandao's Purple Palace were not even at the level of initial success. That was why Jiu Fei had so easily used the Heaven Ascension Mystic technique and used the Purple Gold Divine Sword to destroy the 3 Pure One's Daoist body and scatter his Immortal Tao Divine Soul, causing his soul to dissipate. The 9 secret techniques all had heaven-defying power. In addition to the Ascension secret technique that Jiu Fei had obtained from the heavenly pillar outside the God Race's sacred land, which contained a trace of Tao energy, Jiu Fei had already mastered 3 great secret techniques. However, Li Xuandao's 3 Pure Ones were destroyed. It was not something that could be done in a short amount of time to produce 3 divine venerables from his Violet Palace. However, Jiu Fei, who used the Ascension secret technique, seemed to have lost to the Devil's 8th demonic sky self-destruction, much to everyone's surprise. Using a supreme immortal physique to use the Heaven Ascension secret law, Ji Yufei's strength was infinitely close to the supreme level. How could he lose? Rumble. The heaven and earth trembled as the void shattered. The eighth demonic sky self-destructed, unleashing an unimaginably terrifying might. The void in the region of 10,000 miles ruptured as terrifying spatial cracks appeared. Under everyone's shocked gazes, this part of the world turned into a chaotic void. Extreme destructive energy surged out, causing everyone to feel a sense of danger. Even the little monk Fan Xiu and the primordial demon had to retreat. Boom! Just as everyone was feeling bewildered, the space that was destroyed by the eighth heaven's self-destruction and turned into a chaotic void suddenly shook violently. Then, a purple palm, from big to small, slapped out from the chaotic void. It went against the sky and headed for the Jadebone demonic seal that stood above the ninth devil sky. Boundless energy fluctuations stirred the ninth demonic heavens as the powerful aura it emitted caused one's soul to quake. The purple hand quickly expanded to the size of a heavenly screen. It enveloped a portion of the world as the hand blotted out the sky. He really didn't die. The little monk Fan Xiu and the primordial demon watched this scene nervously. The old tortoise and Hei Tian also sighed in relief. As for the celestial race, they cheered even louder. Rumble. The purple hand blotted out the sky and headed straight for the ninth devil sky seal. It was as if 100,000 ancient divine mountains were moving. The immortal Tao's godly energy was so powerful that it could pierce through the void. Roar! How can he not die even after this? The Jadebone demon roared madly as his expression turned ferocious. He self-destructed the eighth devil sky and yet he still couldn't kill his opponent. This infuriated him and made him secretly shocked. Ninth devil sky. The Jadebone demon roared as his entire body emitted demonic light. Like a peerless demon, he stepped on the ninth devil sky and descended. Boom! The huge purple hand and the descending ninth demonic sky collided fiercely. Boundless energy waves swept out in all directions. The void was like a thin piece of paper that was instantly torn into pieces, turning into nothingness. The deafening sound shook the heavens. The weaker celestial race members in the distance fell from the sky. The terrifying sound waves spread throughout the entire hell realm. Even the celestial race members at the God King level felt their blood churn and their souls tremble. They were shocked. The purple hand clashed with the ninth devil sky. The demonic energy and the immortal Tao's godly energy clashed and cancelled each other out. The entire world seemed like it could crumble at any time. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Everyone looked at this scene in shock. They were dumbfounded. The combat strength displayed by the two was too strong. It was as if two celestials were fighting. The clash was short. The purple hand emitted boundless immortal Tao's godly energy. Countless immortal Tao's godly runes coiled around it. The ninth devil sky began to crack. Ah! The Jadebone devil, who was standing on the ninth level of the devil sky, howled. His crystalline devil body, which seemed to be carved out of divine jade, started to crack. His devil body was cracking. Roar! The Jadebone demon roared in pain. Traces of demonic chi seeped out from his cracked body. Terrifying demonic Tao's power surged, causing the ninth devil sky to tremble. Rumble! The Jadebone demon desperately conjured his demonic energy. Boundless demonic energy surged out from his body and surged into the ninth devil sky. The independent world that had cracked open with countless spatial cracks was actually mending itself. The spatial cracks were vanishing. However, the gigantic purple hand shook and the ninth demonic sky crumbled once again. The gigantic purple hand was like 100,000 primordial divine mountains crashing down from the sky. Dong! With a dull thud, the ninth devil sky was penetrated. There was no suspense. The 9 heavenly fiend divine power had been destroyed by Ji Yufei. The purple hand was unstoppable and indestructible. The ninth devil sky could not withstand it at all. The Jadebone demon was sent flying. The purple hand had completely obliterated the ninth devil sky before dissipating into the void. A figure that resembled both a god and a demon appeared. He had the bearing of an expert that looked down on the world. Swoosh! Ji Fei used the 8 desolation steps. As though he was teleporting through the void, he instantly vanished from his spot. The next moment, he had already caught up to the Jadebone demon who was sent flying. Bam! With a slap, the Jadebone demon's demonic body immediately exploded. It was as though he had shattered a statue carved out of divine jade. The shattered demonic body was like thousands of twinkling stars as it scattered. The Jadebone demon was smashed to smithereens. His demonic body had been shattered by Ji Fei's palm. Ji Fei, who had used the Ascension Mystic technique, was extremely powerful. Every move he made was like a primordial deity. He could pierce through the world and destroy everything. The little monk Fan Xiu and the primordial great demon were not surprised. This was because when Ji Fei's strength suddenly increased by 10 times, Ji Fei had the terrifying strength to defeat the Jadebone demon. In fact, he had the terrifying strength to defeat anyone present. Even they were no match for Ji Fei. However, although Ji Fei's strength was infinitely close to that of a supreme mighty figure, it was not easy to kill one. Even though the demonic body had been destroyed by Ji Fei's palm, the Jadebone demon was still not truly dead. Chapter 618. I won't accept this. The demon's roar reverberated in the air, coming from all directions. It was impossible to pinpoint the exact location of the roar, as if there were countless voices echoing at the same time. Then, a terrifying demonic energy surged out, and a strange demonic aura spread out. Those who sensed this aura all felt a chill down their spines. The Jadebone devil's devil body that had been smashed into thousands of pieces by Ji Fei's palm, at this moment, every piece of the devil body was emitting a resplendent devil light, like twinkling stars. Every piece of the demon's body emitted the demon's soul. It was as if there were thousands of incarnations and each piece contained the demon's soul. For a powerhouse of this level, even if their body was destroyed, it would be difficult to die. Their powerful souls would not dissipate, and with enough time, they would be able to condense a new body. Killing a powerhouse of this level required special methods and methods. So what if you won't accept this? Ji Fei sneered. At this moment, the 3-minute time limit was not over yet. Smashing the demon's body was only a matter of seconds. Roar. Don't be too full of yourself, I will avenge today. The demon's angry voice came from all directions, the rolling sound waves shook the entire sky. You won't have the chance, Ji Fei said in a low voice without a trace of emotion on his face. Then, he waved his hand and the mountain and river cauldron flew out from under his feet. Boom. The mountain and river cauldron shook violently. Ji Fei used his supreme immortal energy to activate the cauldron. Primordial chaos energy surged out from the cauldron and the mouth of the cauldron turned into a bottomless black hole, producing a heaven-devouring power that swallowed the countless pieces of the demon's body scattered in the void. Boom. The primordial chaos energy formed a rapidly spinning black whirlpool at the mouth of the cauldron. The void in front of the cauldron collapsed and was swallowed by the cauldron. Swoosh. More than half of the fragments of the demonic body that were scattered in the air were instantly devoured by the mountain and river cauldron. Ah, damn it. In the air, the Jadebone devil let out a scream of terror. The mountain and river cauldron, the earth mountains and rivers. The immense might of the mountain and river cauldron had locked down a part of the heavens and earth, causing the Jadebone devil to feel a threat to his life. I'll send you to hell. Ji Fei snapped coldly. He then waved his hands and inserted the immortal god force into the mountain and river cauldron to activate its power. Rumble. The mountain river furnace shook again and again. Chaos grand mist energy surged outwards. The place where the mountain river furnace was located seemed to turn into the primal chaos of the world. A boundlessly ancient aura filled the world. The devouring power emitted from the mouth of the mountain and river cauldron became even stronger. The entire void in front of the mouth of the cauldron collapsed and was devoured. Specks of devil body shone with resplendent devil light as they were continuously devoured by the mountain and river cauldron. Everyone who saw this scene was incomparably shocked. Ji Fei wanted to use the power of the mountain and river cauldron to destroy the Jadebone devil and destroy his soul. The mountain and river cauldron was an extreme treasure. It possessed unfathomable power and could even display extreme godly might. The cauldron also contained the ancestral chi of heaven and earth, the primordial chaos energy. If the Jade Bone Devil was truly devoured by the mountain and river cauldron, it might truly be able to destroy the demon. Fan Xiu and the primordial demon felt threatened as well. If Ji Yufei could destroy the Jade Bone Devil, it meant that he had the ability to deal with them as well. However, Fan Xiu and the primordial demon did not make a move. Their goal was simple. If the Jade Bone Devil was devoured by the mountain and river cauldron, there would be one less person fighting for the Hell Dao. They were using this world of death as a wager. The final winner would become the master of this world of death and reopen the world in their hands. Ah! The Jade Bone Devil screamed in fear. This time, he was truly panicking. The opponent had an extreme sacred weapon, especially a mountain and river cauldron that nurtured primordial chaos energy. With its great power, the Jade Bone Devil had frozen this area of space. He didn't even have a chance to escape. Ji Yufei sneered and continued to pour out strands of immortal energy to activate the mountain and river cauldron, causing the cauldron's power to grow stronger and stronger. The mouth of the mountain and river cauldron exuded a great suction force that could truly devour this part of the world. The frozen space began to dissipate like snow, turning into primordial nothingness. The entire world was devoured by the mountain and river cauldron and turned into a primordial nothingness. The broken pieces of the Jade Bone Devil scattered in the air were devoured one after another. The Jade Bone Devil's power rapidly declined. He struggled with all his might, but it was all in vain. After using the Heaven Ascension secret law, Ji Yufei was extremely powerful. His supreme immortal physique displayed great battle prowess. He used his immortal energy to activate the mountain and river cauldron, causing the cauldron to unleash a strand of divine power. Although it was only a strand of divine power, it was still not something the Jade Bone Devil could stop. He was putting up a last-ditch struggle. Being devoured by the mountain and river cauldron was only a matter of time. However, just as the crowd assumed that the Jade Bone Demon would not be able to escape, Ji Yufei's body suddenly shuddered. Then, the powerful aura that was comparable to a supreme almighty being emitted from his body rapidly decreased. His terrifying power that was comparable to a supreme almighty seemed to be quickly dissipating, and his strength was rapidly weakening. Very soon, his strength had fallen by 10 times. Just a little bit more, damn it. Ji Yufei was a little dejected. He had no choice but to stop. 3 minutes had passed and the Heaven Ascension secret law had lost its effect. If he forcefully used it, he would have to pay the price of his life force. This price was too great. If he forcefully used the Heaven Ascension secret law in order to kill the Jade Bone Devil, it would leave a hidden injury in his body. Burning his life force was something that no one would do unless it was a matter of life and death. This was the same as using up one's own lifespan. Buzz. The mountain and river cauldron shook. The heaven-devouring power emitted by the cauldron quickly weakened. The terrifying divine power also disappeared. Boom. Boundless demonic light illuminated the dark sky. After the mountain and river cauldron's extreme divine might disappeared, the Jade Bone Demon's demonic body fragment that had yet to be devoured shone so brightly that no one could open their eyes. Today's enmity will be repaid tenfold in the future. The Jade Bone Devil's voice quickly faded away. He used the last of his strength to break the seal of the mountain and river cauldron and rushed out. He didn't dare to linger. After leaving behind a harsh sentence, he disappeared from this world. The demonic light, which was at its brightest, suddenly disappeared. How dare you? Ji Yufei roared angrily. A divine eye appeared on his glabella, emitting a misty divine light that scanned the surroundings. The immortal Tao divine eye could see through all illusions, pointing straight to the origin of all things in the world. However, Ji Yufei did not find any trace of the Jade Bone Demon. It was as if the demon had vanished into thin air, completely and utterly. What goes around comes around. This time, it was Ji Yufei's turn to be unsatisfied. Not being able to kill the Jade Bone Devil, he had left behind a future problem for himself. Ji Yufei felt helpless. As long as the Heaven Ascension secret law lasted for half a minute, he would be able to absorb the Jade Bone Devil into the mountain and river cauldron and refine it until its soul dissipates. Could it be that the Jade Bone Devil was not fated to die? Ji Yufei retracted his immortal eye. The eye between his brows disappeared under his skin. The eye that could see through all illusions and see through all illusions disappeared as if it never existed. With a wave of his hand, the mountain and river cauldron flew back and was stored in his dantian. When he attacked the 9 mountains, he had obtained the other half of the peerless blade in the end. Now, he already possessed 3 extreme saint armaments. However, he still had no idea whether the bronze bell he obtained from the White Jade Mountain in the Hell Path was an extreme saint treasure or not. Back then, when Ji Yufei was in the outer region of the Naraka Dao, he had once obtained a bronze bell that was covered in green copper from a white jade ancient text in a mountain range. The bronze bell was extraordinary. Even if Ji Yufei didn't know how to activate the power of the bronze bell, the sound of the bell was like thousands of Buddhas chanting scriptures. It had a strange power that could purify one's soul. This was definitely a Buddhist weapon. It was most likely an extreme path Buddhist weapon refined by a Buddhist lord. This bronze bell was stored in the dantian of Ji Yufei's body. He had been refining it day and night with his own essence qi. However, there was no reaction from the bronze bell. The ancient Buddhist sovereigns had refined more than one extreme Dao Buddhist weapon. This was an anomaly. Extreme Dao experts would usually only refine one sacred weapon. However, the Buddhist lord was different. He seemed to be blessed by the heavens and had refined several extreme path Buddhist weapons. The green jade ring blade and the 3 realms Buddhist lamp were both extreme path Buddhist weapons refined by the Buddhist lord. The bronze bell that Ji Yufei obtained was also a Buddhist weapon. However, it was unknown whether it was the extreme path Buddhist weapon refined by the Buddhist lord. If it was, then Ji Yufei had 4 extreme path sacred weapons. Possessing 4 extreme divine weapons at the same time, moreover, they were all refined by different extreme divine masters. This was absolutely unprecedented and would never be replicated in the future. At this time, the little monk Fan Xiu and the nameless old monk had already quietly retreated. They were very afraid of Ji Yufei because Ji Yufei had displayed a terrifying strength comparable to a supreme almighty. Although they didn't know how Ji Yufei increased his strength tenfold in an instant, they didn't want to take the risk. They could only choose to retreat. The primordial demon also broke through the void and teleported away. He had obtained something hidden under the 9 mountains. He needed to cultivate and improve his strength as soon as possible. The pressure Ji Yufei put on him was too great. Ji Yufei knew that the little monk Fan Xiu and the primordial demon had retreated, but he didn't stop them. Instead, he breathed a sigh of relief. He had already performed the Heaven Ascension secret skill today. He would not be able to perform the Heaven Ascension secret skill in a short period of time. If the little monk Fan Xiu and the original Great Devil attacked him now, he might not be able to defend himself. Chapter 619. The happiest about Ji Yufei defeating the Jadebone Devil was, of course, the one who knew Ji Yufei's true identity was the old tortoise and Hei Tian. No one else in the Naraka realm knew about Ji Yufei's true identity. The original Great Devil and the little monk Fan Xiu could see the strangeness of the supreme immortal physique, and they could also sense the soul ripples within. However, they absolutely didn't know what happened on top of the supreme immortal physique. How could such a supreme immortal physique be possessed by someone else? One had to know that an immortal cultivator with a supreme immortal physique was already an almighty immortal cultivator. Such a character was very difficult to kill. Even the original devil and Fan Xiu couldn't do it. The original devil and Fan Xiu could see that Ji Yufei had taken the body of that almighty immortal cultivator, but they didn't say it out loud. They were very wary of Ji Yufei, so they quietly retreated. Ji Yufei exchanged a few words with the Protoss that had gathered. Then, he brought Old Tortoise and Erebus into the void and returned to the Purple Mansion Immortal Palace. Aside from Patriarch Li Jingxie and Supreme Li Fan, everyone else was cheering for Ji Yufei's victory over the Jadebone Devil. Ji Yufei's current identity was still the only surviving ancestor of the God race. Other than the God race Patriarch Li Jingxie and Hierarch Li Fan, who were a little suspicious, no one noticed anything amiss. After Ji Yufei left, the deities used their own techniques to return to their sacred ground. Only after all the deities had left did the creatures of the dead dare to approach this area. The terrifying energy fluctuations still hadn't dissipated. Although the shattered void was rapidly repaired by the power of the world that had been torn apart by the battle was still shaking. The chaotic void was still emitting a heart-palpitating aura of destruction. The Naraka Tao was an almost perfect world created by the ancient Buddhist Lord using his supreme Buddhist power. It was extremely stable and confined, but it had still been broken through. Super experts at the almighty level had a cultivation base that could shatter the heavens and earth. They were much stronger than immortals. Very soon, the dark clouds and nether fog that had been dispersed by the energy storm that erupted from the great battle floated over from all directions, gradually covering the sky once more. A boundless death aura and a chilly wind blew. The Supreme Emperor of the Undying Skeleton Tribe, the Supreme Emperor of the Nether Tribe, and the Corpse Emperor silently appeared in the sky above the battlefield. They glanced at the messy battlefield below, and they were extremely shocked. The ground was shattered, the mountains had collapsed, and the surrounding area of a few thousand kilometers had been completely destroyed. Then, the emperors of the three races of the undead creatures quickly disappeared into the void. In the depths of the Naraka realm, the God Clan was the strongest. It was already a foregone conclusion that could not be changed. The dead clans had no other way out other than submitting to the God Clan. In the sacred land of the Protoss, in the purple divine palace at the peak of the divine mountain, Ji Yufei directly opened the inner world within Li Xuandao's dantian and walked in with the old turtle, Hei Tian. Li Xuandao's inner world was full of vitality. Beautiful mountain peaks, rivers, and lakes dotted between the peaks could be seen everywhere. It was like an undeveloped fairyland with a sun rotating in the sky. There were night and day, and even the moon and stars. This was an inner world that already had the embryonic form of a world. It could be said that if there was enough time for this world to slowly grow, it was likely to grow into a near-perfect world. Brat, you've struck it big. The old turtle stood in the void and looked at the seemingly endless world in front of him with sparkling eyes. It's not bad, Ji Yufei said with a smile. TSK. Brat, keep pretending. The old turtle couldn't help but snappily rebuke. He could already see that this inner world had unlimited potential. Even the inner world established by an almighty wouldn't dare to say that it had unlimited potential. However, it had to be said that Li Xuandao really had heaven-defying means. Damn, I sensed at least 3 places filled with the aura of life. This Li Xuandao actually moved 3 divine springs of life into this inner world. The old turtle was astonished. The divine spring of life was extremely precious. Even in ancient times, it was difficult to find one. However, there were at least 3 of them in Li Xuandao's inner world. The old turtle couldn't help but be moved. He knew very well what would happen if there was a divine spring of life in a cultivator's inner world. An endless stream of life essence could nourish the inner world and fill it with vitality. Most importantly, the divine spring of life could be refined into the origin of heaven and earth within the inner world, becoming the ancestral vein of the earth. In this world of death, the origin of heaven and earth was the realm pearl. The realm pearl's predecessor might have been the origin of heaven and earth refined from the divine spring of life. The origin of heaven and earth was the beginning of life. The 9 dragons competing for the pearl trapped the power of the realm pearl, which was why the infernal realm became a world of death. Only by breaking the 9 dragons competing for the pearl could the power of the realm pearl be released, and this world of death would gradually recover its vitality. Endless death gives birth to a little life. Only in a world of death can there be so many divine springs of life. Ji Yufei sighed. His divine soul had fused with Li Xuandao's memories, so he knew everything about Li Xuandao. Naturally, his knowledge had also increased a lot. He was no longer a cultivation maniac who only knew how to cultivate. From Li Xuandao's memories, he learned about the origin of the god race and many things that happened in the 9 dragons competing for the pearl. He also knew why the god race appeared in the infernal realm created by the ancient Buddhist Lord. The god race was indeed the inheritance of the legendary Supreme Tao ancestor. The infernal realm was not created by the ancient Buddhist Lord alone. The ancient Buddhist Lord and the Supreme Tao ancestor had once joined forces. However, Li Xuandao only knew that the ancient Buddhist lord and the supreme Dao ancestor had once joined forces to do something earth-shattering, but he did not know what exactly it was. During the ancient times, the world changed drastically. Almost all the extreme experts disappeared one after another, and the god race, which had inherited the supreme Dao ancestor's inheritance, was inexplicably sealed in this side of the world. After countless years, until now, the Dao ancestor's prophecy that had been circulating among the god race showed signs of coming true, allowing the god race to see the light of dawn. Brat, you have so many divine springs of life. How about giving me one? The old tortoise looked at Ji Yufei and said with shining eyes. He had cut off the connection between his inner world and his physical body, so his inner world had lost the chance to grow into a perfect world. No matter how the old tortoise refined his inner world, it could not grow into a perfect world. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to the old tortoise. The old tortoise hated the guy who had trapped him in the ultimate formation back then. If that guy had not wanted to slowly wear him down with the power of the ultimate formation, the old tortoise would not have cut off the connection between his inner world and his physical body to save his life. The old tortoise wanted the divine springs of life. He wanted to re-establish the connection between his inner world and his physical body, so that his inner world would have the possibility of unlimited growth again. You want the divine springs of life? Ji Yufei asked with a smile. Of course. The old tortoise quickly replied. A mouthful of the divine springs of life was definitely as precious as a divine weapon. Only a fool would not want it. Well, it doesn't matter if I give you a mouthful, Ji Yufei said. The old tortoise was overjoyed, and his smile was so bright that only his teeth could be seen. He patted Ji Yufei's shoulder and said, "You're indeed a brother who has gone through life and death together." But, when the old tortoise's words of gratitude were about to rush out of his mouth like a surging river, the two words that came out of Ji Yufei's mouth immediately froze the old tortoise's smile. "But what? You're not thinking of going back on your word, are you? Don't mess with me like this. Be careful, or I'll turn against you," the old tortoise said quickly. "Hihi, old tortoise, I can't give you the divine springs of life for free. You have to give me something in exchange," Ji Yufei said when he saw that the old tortoise was so excited. The old tortoise carefully looked up and down at Ji Yufei a few times, and then said, "I'm wondering when you've become so generous. You can give me a mouthful of the divine springs of life just like that. Tell me, what do you fancy in my hand? When did this brat become so shrewd?" The old tortoise thought to himself, could it be that this brat has taken a fancy to my mystic tortoise divine armor? That treasure is a life-saving treasure. I can't give it to him, not even if he gives me 10 mouthfuls of the divine springs of life. The old tortoise's expression changed several times, and he looked a little uneasy. All of this fell into Ji Yufei's eyes. Ji Yufei couldn't help but find it funny. The longer this old tortoise lived, the more impatient he became. "I want the Buddhist lamp in your hand," Ji Yufei said after thinking for a moment. Buddhist lamp? The old tortoise was startled when he heard this, and then he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. If it was that Buddhist lamp, he could still accept it, even if it was a supreme Buddhist artifact refined by a Buddhist lord. Deal. The old tortoise was very straightforward. He directly took out the Buddhist lamp from his inner world, which was said to be able to illuminate the 3 realms and the 9 underworlds, and handed it to Ji Yufei. It was an ancient bronze lamp that didn't seem to be anything special. If it didn't emit an obscure fluctuation of Buddhist power, this Buddhist lamp could only be considered an ordinary antique. Ji Yufei noticed that the Buddhist lamp was gently vibrating in the old tortoise's hand. There was a mighty Buddhist power as if it could fly away at any time. The bean-sized lamp emitted a tricolored Buddhist light, and a peaceful aura immediately filled the area. However, a ball of demonic light rushed out of the old tortoise's hand. A vast demonic power surged and enveloped the Buddhist lamp, preventing it from flying away. Chapter 620. Ji Yufei was surprised to see that the old turtle wanted to use demonic energy to control the ancient bronze lamp in his hand. The 3 realms Buddhist lamp emitted Buddhist energy on its own as if it wanted to fly away. "How can this be?" Ji Yufei asked. "Hehe, do you think an extreme sacred tool is an ordinary magic treasure? Can it be refined at will? The old turtle said with disdain. You're not purposely giving me a hard time, are you? Ji Fei glanced at old tortoise suspiciously and said with some displeasure. Why would this guy hand over the supreme Buddhist artifact so easily? Supreme saint artifacts are all treasures that have given birth to an artifact soul. They have the primordial spirit imprint of the original owner. If one's cultivation level is not high enough, even if they obtain the supreme saint artifact, it will be difficult for them to display the power they should have, old tortoise analyzed. No way. You've had this lamp for a while now. Have you not completely refined it? Ji Fei asked in surprise. The old turtle looked at Ji Fei and sighed. I want to refine it, but I don't have the strength to do so. Not everyone is as lucky as me. Ji Fei's cultivation was far from the old turtle's, but he was able to refine the violet gold divine sword and the mountain and river cauldron by chance. This made the old turtle extremely envious. Yes. Ji Fei nodded. An extreme sacred tool was not something anyone could refine for their own use. It was easier said than done to erase the primordial spirit imprint left behind by the original owner of the sacred tool. Unless my cultivation can return to its former peak state and erase the primordial spirit imprint in the Three Realms Buddhist lamp with supreme demonic energy, I will be able to completely control the lamp. The old turtle was unwilling and depressed. His cultivation was infinitely close to the realm of the Almighty, but he was still one step away from truly entering the realm and regaining his former cultivation. Damn, you old turtle, no wonder you were so straightforward. You can't use this ancient lamp at will, Ji Fei said in annoyance. It turned out that the ancient lamp was like a chicken rib in the old turtle's hands. It was difficult for the old turtle to erase the trace of Lord Buddha's primordial spirit imprint in the lamp, so it was difficult for him to truly control the lamp. Exchanging a supreme Buddhist artifact that he couldn't control for a mouthful of the divine spring of life, it could be said that the old tortoise had made a huge profit. The divine spring of life was extremely precious, and it could allow the old tortoise's inner world to regain unlimited growth potential. You brat, you won't go back on your word, will you? This is the condition you proposed. Old tortoise couldn't help but worry when he saw Ji Fei's strange expression. After stealing Li Xuandao's fruit of the way, this brat was already comparable to a mighty figure. He was no match for him. If he didn't admit it, there was nothing he could do. After all, his fists were hard. Old tortoise was a little nervous. In the world of cultivation, everything was decided by strength. Whoever had the hardest fist was the boss. This was an unchanging truth, the embodiment of the law of the jungle. Hihi, why would I go back on my word? Am I that kind of person? Just because you can't refine this Buddhist artifact doesn't mean that I can't either. Ji Fei suddenly said to Old Tortoise with a smile. Ah. Old Tortoise suddenly thought of something and came to a sudden realization. He then said, You brat, you're smart enough. If you use the rising scripture, you still have a chance. At this time, Old Tortoise remembered that after Ji Fei stole Li Xuandao's fruit of the way, he was no longer the same as before. If he used the rising scripture, his cultivation would be infinitely close to the strength of a supreme mighty figure. Such strength was enough to erase the trace of the primordial spirit imprint left by the ancient Buddhist lord in the Buddhist weapon. Ji Fei reached out and took an ancient lamp from Old Tortoise's hand. He then smiled and said to Old Tortoise, You can choose any of the divine spring of life in this world. Really? Old Tortoise was overjoyed. He thought he had misheard. Choose any of them. Old Tortoise couldn't help but be wild with joy. Of course, but only if you have the strength to collect it, said Ji Fei. Old Tortoise laughed. You don't have to worry about that. With my strength, can't I collect a divine spring of life? What a joke. Is that so? Don't blame me for not reminding you. If you can't even collect a single divine spring, don't cry then. Ji Fei looked at Old Tortoise meaningfully and said with a smile. If I can't collect it, then it's my bad luck. Old Tortoise answered casually. He was already impatient because he had already chosen the divine spring to collect. It was a divine spring located in the central region of this world. Above the divine spring, there was a spring lake that was hundreds of meters wide and as green as jade. Around the divine spring, there were lush immortal grasses and divine trees. Unknown fruits hung between the green leaves, emanating an intoxicating fruity fragrance. To be able to grow around the divine spring, the immortal grasses and divine trees were extraordinary. Spiritual energy surged between the branches and leaves, giving off a refreshing feeling. Above the divine spring, there was a thick mist of spiritual energy that drifted in the air. This was the best divine spring Li Xuandao had refined in this part of the world. The spiritual energy from the divine spring nourished the entire central region. If Old Tortoise collected this divine spring, the central region of this world would undergo drastic changes. However, Ji Yufei wasn't worried when he saw that Old Tortoise had his eyes on this divine spring. Ji Yufei put away the Three Realms Buddhist lamp and flew into the depths of this world. There was also a divine spring there, and inside it sat a person. Only Old Tortoise and Hei Tian were left in the sky. Congratulations, Senior. Hei Tian hurried to congratulate Old Tortoise after seeing Ji Yufei leave. Hehe, you're still a little bit away from your so-called Emperor realm, right? Wait until I collect the divine spring, then I'll fulfill your wish. Old Tortoise was very happy. At this moment, everything was pleasing to his eyes. Thank you, Senior. Hei Tian was overjoyed and quickly thanked Old Tortoise. He was already a quasi-Emperor realm expert. One more step and he would be a super expert in the Emperor realm. Apart from the Protoss and the Supreme Emperors among the creatures of death, in the entire world of death, super experts in the Emperor realm were revered. Old Tortoise couldn't wait any longer. He brought Hei Tian and flew above the divine spring. Looking down, he saw the faint shadow of a dragon shrouding the spirit mist above the divine lake. It's the dragon chi of the great earth. This divine spring has already nurtured the dragon chi of the great earth. Old Tortoise's heart trembled, and then he was ecstatic. This divine spring had nurtured the dragon chi, and the dragon chi of the great earth was leaking out. This was a divine spring that could grow into a dragon vein of the great earth. Moreover, the dragon vein of the great earth was already in its embryonic form. Otherwise, the dragon chi of the great earth would not be leaking out. Step back, I'm going to start. Old Tortoise was overjoyed and immediately prepared to collect the divine spring.